is the truth. Okay, so thank you so much. I am going to go through and try to keep this focused as much as possible on the table.
Sure.
And I guess the first thing I noticed this year, Mike, is that our table is not normal.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So there's some differences.
We are in fact recording this now, right?
Yep,
okay.
We are recording.
Right. So yeah, hey, I'm Mike. I'm head referee for the East Tennessee Regional for the last 10-ish years. And I've been doing this in some capacity or another since 2000. So for you new folks, this part's all about the robot game. This is what I've lived for 15 years plus at this point, and I think it's, as an engineer, at least by degrees, if not by title anymore, I think this is the coolest thing in the whole event. Gives your kids, practical experience, and they kind of get to know what real engineering is like, the compromises, the designs, the strategies, the randomness. And if they're a little bit competitive, it'll charge those kids up too. So there's two main things that I'm going to be referring to off of the First Inspires resource library for FLL Challenge. The first of them is going to be the Robot Game Rulebook. That's a PDF, 32 pages long. Shows how the mission models are going to get, does not show how the mission models are put together, does show where they're put on the table, does describe the missions, does describe how the map's going to get laid down, and we're going to go through that. And then the second one is the challenge updates, which is another PDF you can find on the resources page. That one is currently 4 pages long and will be updated throughout the season up until about the time our qualifiers start. So if something needs to be corrected in the rule book, they do not edit the rule book. They just edit this running list of updates that's in reverse chronological order. So old updates at the end, newer updates toward the beginning. It's only 4 pages long right now, because there's not a lot in there. And I'm going to have to look at that real quick to make sure mission model wise or robot game mission, there's nothing much in there.
No, I noticed that it's right below the rule book, and it says updated August 24th.
Yep, you can always watch that date.
Okay, so the date will change. So it's kind of like a living document.
Yep.
They tried to basically make it.
Does it say that on the actual website, or is it just in the document?
Yes, it says it in the document, and it also says it right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. And that one, okay. So not that it probably matters. FirstLegoLeague.org is not, last time I knew, was not 100% official. FirstInspires.org would be the official one.
Okay, when I went through and I went to their resource page and I asked for building instructions, it sent me here.
Interesting.
So this is where
mine are all coming off of a First Inspires site.
Oh, wow.
I remember, we didn't go to the same panel. They're in transition of trying to get everything basically.
And if they're buying FirstLegoLeague.org or something, that's cool. That's just something I didn't know. But yeah, the First Inspires site is still active, and as far as I know, is the authoritative one. Okay, so going on through the Robot Game Rulebook, 32 pages of PDF. I'm going to skip up to page number, let's see, I'm going to skip up to page 5. And so there's a how to get started at the top of that page, 4 sets of QR codes, 6 main headings up there, and it just basically walks you through the stuff you're going to have to do to get the robot game practice prepared. So step 1, do all your mission model building. That's on pages 22 and 23. We're going to skip that for this session today. Number 2, get your field mat on a table or on a floor. We're on an Andy Mark table here. They have other instructions for building your own table on page 24 there. Number 3, I'm gonna dip into in more detail. Follow the field setup instructions on field mat placement, on dual lock placement, and on mission model setup. So that's on pages 24, 25, and 26 through 28 in the PDF. Those are all hot linked inside the PDF. Short version, is going to be, if you've got a table of the correct size and everything, this year, unlike last year, the mission model mat is going to be basically centered up in the middle of the table, okay? So last year, we would have had 1/4 circle, and I'm going to call it the southwest corner of the table. This will be the lower right-hand corner of the table if you're just reading how the text is on it. But I'm going to call it southwest because there's a compass always on the table. This year it's up here in the northwest corner that tells you north, south, east, and west, and that's what I'm going to try to refer to. So in previous years, that 1/4 circle would be about where you see it here on the table, and this mat would go all the way to the other end on the far east end of the table area. They have changed that up this year, and so now we have 2 1/4 circles, and now we have a mat that is in the middle of the table for reasons that will become clear after that. As far as the mission models go, there's no way I'm going through how to build them all, if for no other reason than I haven't gone through all the instructions myself. But there will always be instructions in the mission models, hopefully this will be put back together, of where you're going to look. So when you're actually ready to stick these down, you're going to normally take 2 pieces of the dual lock, peel off one backing strip, and set them down on the little sort of cross-marked target in here. Normally it's a little rectangle or square with an X in the middle of it. So you have 2 pieces of dual lock stuck to each other and one glued down to the table at that position. And then later, you'll peel off the other end of it, you'll take your mission model, you'll press it on there, you'll get everything, well, you'll get it lined up. There's always an outline here for the entire thing. So you get the mission model lined up as close as you can, you press everything down, you hear all the snap snap, wherever that is. Somebody's gonna have to check me on the little dinosaur guy here if he goes in the right direction. He goes up here. He goes up here, well that explains it. You will definitely get used to resetting these as you go on. And then, yeah, you'll see that the placed mission model lines up with the outline on the table. All of this is actually on page 25, and if it says something different than I did, the document is almost certainly more correct than I am. Let's see, page 26 on mission model setup. Some of these are about how the referees are going to be resetting tables between matches and how you're going to have to reset the table in between practice runs during the semester. And so in the home area, when your students have their innovation project model, it can go into either home area. In the right home area, so over here in the southeast corner, I'm seeing place the giant, but actually in the home area, sorry, I'll get my right definitions here in a second. The home area can be off the mat. The 1/4 circles are called the launch area. We'll get to that here in a minute. So, dinosaur toy in the right home area for missions 1 and 9. Oil platform, energy storage, and other things. You can go through the rest of these to get the oil barrels set up right, the water, and everything else. When you build these models, you kind of want to make sure that everything is kind of loose. You know, you want it to hold together, but you also...
That one doesn't have the
That one
stickies.
does not have, and I'm working up. This was, what was it? Okay, that's where that goes, okay. Yeah, don't need the dual lock on that one for what I'm doing. All right, but you want these models to be loose. We'll try and do that at any of the tournaments so that things don't bind up and you don't have to just like absolutely slam something to get it to move. In the event, hopefully not at this qualifier and hopefully not at the regionals, that something is stuck and doesn't move and your robot actually does what it's supposed to do but it doesn't trigger the model, bring that up with your referees on that half of the table. And if that mission model is malfunctioning for whatever reason, there is a benefit of the doubt section of rules in there to where you should be able to get that. Now, to avoid some of that, What we normally do when the teams are getting set up at the first of a match is some teams will ask the referees, they'll be looking over the table like a hawk because they've seen it for the last, several months, and they've got it committed to memory. If they see something that just looks a little bit out of line, sometimes it is, and we correct it there at the last minute. We try to get it all right to begin with. Occasionally, something gets missed. Similarly, there is absolutely nothing with the team asking, for example, can we make sure, can you show me, Mr. Referee, Ms. Referee, that right there is moving like it's supposed to and isn't going to bind up, okay? Be polite about it, but that should not be a big issue for them to demonstrate for you because we want these to go as well as y'all do. I'm going to skip past the rest of the mission model setup parts and go back to page 5. Okay. And so now moving on into section, or number 4 at the top of page 5, learn how to play. There's the rules and there's the missions. Missions are on pages 7 through 15. Rules are on pages 16 to 21. And so there are specific definitions for how things work on the robot game here. And so things like in, on, completely in, touching, things like that, equipment, mission model, damage, things like that. All of these are well defined, and the mission descriptions are always going to use that same vocabulary that's going to show up in the rules. So y'all are going to need to just over and over pour over these. Do it with the kids so that they get familiar with it too. But because the thing is that just because you see how something worked in a video, as an example, that is one way that a mission could get accomplished. But the letter of the law on these games is the referees read the mission descriptions and the conditions for getting points, and that's how we operate. It doesn't matter, and we love it when you do it a way that we hadn't thought of, okay? You got lucky, you got creative, or whatever, but if it's in a scoring condition at the end of the match, we're going to score it, and it kind of doesn't matter how you do it within certain bounds. Okay, and so then number 5 is check out what's new this year on page 16, the guiding principles for the robot game on page 6, and any other challenge updates, because always remember, the challenge updates PDF supersedes what you see in the robot game rulebook. Because it's easier to update that one than the original book. And then review this guide. The glossary is on page 16. There's a path diagram for your kids to strategize how they want to do missions, and a sample score sheet on pages 30 and 31. Okay. So then, guiding principles for the robot game, that's the overall rules, and then we get more specific after that. Your team works together to design and build a Lego robot. It completes a series of missions autonomously within a 2.5-minute robot game match. Number 2 is the team launches their robots from one of the 2 launch areas. So for the new coaches, this is different. Sorry, for the old coaches, this is a radical change. For the new coaches, you're not going to know the difference, okay? But this go round, we have 2 launch areas, 2 quarter circles in the southwest and southeast corners of the map. Your team that's doing the robot game missions that round are going to be split into 2 groups. Those 2 groups are going to stay on their side of the table. They are not going to interact with each other by hand or anything. They don't get to pass stuff back and forth or anything, because there is a rule this year that says the only way something moves from the left hand or right hand home area to the other one is if the robot does it. So your robot can deliver things, as often as it needs to, but there's not going to be any tagging across from one side to the other between your teams. What that does is that gives more kids more opportunity to play in a robot game than in years past, okay? We've always had a rule when we had one home area or one launch area and one set of kids up at the table. We always had a tag in and tag out of, pick your 2 kids that are going to be up there for any given mission. Good to watch them tag in and tag out. I'm happy to watch twice as much tag in and tag out if that's how the team wants to organize themselves. But If you've got 2 kids, they're going to be split up and solo on either side of the table. So try and get 3, try and get 4, try and get more, but there's only going to be 2 at the table, 2 on each side of the table at any given time, tagging in and tagging out as they need to. Okay. All right, so they launched their robot from one of the 2 launch areas, and this is going to be in the game definitions. But this is a I won't say subtle, but it's an important point that is really easy to get mixed up on. Okay, what we call the launch area is going to be either one of these quarter circle areas, either red bordered or blue bordered in the southwest or southeast corner of the map. Okay, home includes the launch areas. It also includes all of this empty space off to the side of the map. And so there are rules of things that can occur in the home area, things that can occur in the launch area, okay? But home includes launch, but launch does not include all of home. So for all practical purposes, this outside the mat part of home, that's where the kids can arrange their own equipment for things they're going to swap in and out during the match. They can hold stuff that has been delivered back to their launch area, back to home as part of a mission or their innovation model or anything else. But this quarter circle is the launch area, okay? And so they always go out with the robot from the launch area, has to be completely in it. They launch the robot goes out, does its thing, comes back to anywhere in home. Launch from inside launch, come back to anywhere inside home.
Okay, so does it matter what materials are on each side? So like we have the dinosaur over here in the east.
The dinosaur has to stay over there the dinosaur has to start out over there as per mission model.
Okay.
Or field setup instructions.
Okay.
But if necessary, the robot could deliver that giant dinosaur all the way over to the other home area if it needed to. Now, I'd have to look at the mission to see if that's advantageous. It's probably not, because it's take the dinosaur out to somewhere on the table, right?
I think you got to load a sail into him too.
Okay, so if it's load him up with a piece that you retrieve from the table,
Yeah.
okay, and the dinosaur is already on the right-hand side, where strategically should you be driving your robot to save yourself time on getting that cell loaded into the dinosaur so you can drag the dinosaur back out onto the field?
So
It's probably going to be however you get it over there. You got to get the cell over into the right area, or you got to drag the dinosaur over into the left area. Easier to get the thing over there.
So extension pieces though, so like I know that the robot has to go from side to side, but you're gonna have literally 4 kids, because you can have 2 on one side, 2 on the other, but they each might have different extension pieces depending on what missions they're running.
Extension pieces meaning equipment that they're going to attach to the robot or use as part of a mission. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to call that equipment because the book does.
Okay.
Okay. And so, yes, each side can have their own equipment for whatever missions are going to get launched from that side.
Okay.
The robot is allowed to carry things from one side to the other, but the robot has to do it.
And are we still going to have the setup points where if you had set up all of your mission materials, your equipment?
I'll check the book, but yeah, almost certainly that's still going to be a rule. Okay.
And will it be doubled because you have 2 sides of the?
Because it's different this year, I'm going to be looking in the rule book here in a second to see what that bonus actually reads as, because that's what it's going to be. Okay. All right. Autonomous, launches from one of the 2 launch areas, moves around the field attempting to complete the missions in the order chosen by the team. That's where strategy can come into, okay? If you have the opportunity to have a mildly complicated program that can do 3 or 4 things in one run, great, if it can do them without screwing anything up, okay? If a mistake in mission A messes up missions B and C, and now they're in non-scoring conditions, that's a risk you take, and you might put yourself in a worse case. Now, we take the best score out of 3, okay? So if you got a strategy that's not 100% reliable, but when it pays off, it really works, may still be worth doing that, okay? But practice, strategize, figure that kind of stuff out. Team starts the match with 6 precision tokens, which are these little red, little waffle disc looking things. When we had a one-sided board, our referees would typically just pile them all up in the southwest corner where nobody was ever going to do anything. We don't have that now. We're going to figure that out, okay? But there will be 6 on the table when you get started. If the robot goes haywire, especially if the robot goes haywire, but if for whatever reason your team has to go out and grab the robot in order to get it back into home and get it back into launch area so you can do another mission, with the exception of, we say, Mr. or Ms. Referee, that was our last mission, our robot is out there, we just want to turn the motor off and be done with it so it's not straining up against something or runs the risk of messing something up. We just want to go out there and hit the power button and turn it off. That is not a touch pin, or that is not an interruption and does not cost you a token. Anything else in terms of we grab the robot to bring it back, it's about to hit something and we need to get it back, that kind of thing, that's an interruption. Now on that point, with interruptions, there should be a rule in here that says don't use the team members in place of the robot or sensors or anything else. It's worded kind of like that, okay? To where if your team comes up with a strategy of we're just going to haul down the board as fast as we can, do these things, but we're not going to make it stop. We're going to go out there, and when we see it does a thing, we're going to go back out there and grab it? No. Okay? Your robot needs to be under control and in such a way where you're not, trying to work around the rules and say, well, if we went and grab it, yeah, we lose a token, but we made all these points on missions, but we made all those points on missions because we did that split-second timing with our eyes and with our brains rather than the robot. That ain't going to go. That should be in the rule book, though. Which, again, reason to read the rule book from start to finish with the students. During a match, only the robot can move objects from one home area to another. So that is no passing material, no passing equipment, no passing anything from student to student across the 2 halves of the table. On one side of the table, trade up as much as you need to amongst the 2 kids that are on that side. But nothing crosses from side to side unless the robot delivers it across the table. When a robot is interrupted, you take the penalty, okay? It can be moved to either area. Now that is strategic, potentially, okay? But again, you gotta read the rule books for if we interrupt it, what do we get to keep? What do we lose when we interrupt it? Because there are conditions in there of you were bringing something back, you interrupt, you might lose the something. There are other rules that say you were delivering something, your stuff, or we'll read the rules, but for lack of a better term, retrievals often mean that you lose the thing when you interrupt it. Deliveries interrupted mean that you usually get to keep the thing. But again, rule book, letter of the law, and we'll figure it out from there. Okay, number 6, mission requirements must be visible at the end of the match to score unless otherwise stated in the mission, and that's pretty rare. Okay, so let's say there is a mission, and I know there is, that says grab the little high five guy here, pull that down, and the hand is up there making a high five with the other hand, okay? Let's say that's a scoring condition, okay? And they do that 2 minutes into the round, and there it is. And then 2 minutes and 25 seconds into the round, they're trying to do the car, they're trying to do something else up here on the north end. They smack into that thing and put it back. Does it score or does it not score? Unfortunately, it does not score if it's back out of a scoring position at the end of the match. Okay? Again, that's the reason why we have it's not an interruption if you just need to shut it off at the end of the match and you're not going to do any more missions. Okay? But, the students, and again, best out of 3, there's always chances for them to do better on another round. But that also makes the refs' lives a whole lot easier in that we're generally not looking for splits. We're not having to keep track of every bit of the table on a second by second and marking stuff down on the score sheet as it happens. Okay? What we get to watch out for is launch area, interruptions, what are the rules on all of that, and we get to focus on the table and the robot and everything versus having to do this sort of split brain, multitasking thing. Okay? Okay. Team will have 3 matches. Only their highest score will count. Not the average, not the drop the lowest, not anything else. Best round counts for everything. Okay? First year when we were down here in the Summertown qualifier. Okay? True story. I don't have names on all of it. 12 teams from Summertown and thereabouts. 1 team out of Nashville had Amazon backing. Now I will tell you, the team from Nashville, they came down here. They were a solid team. Okay? Their robot came out, and in a very small amount of time, they could rack up a whole bunch of missions very efficiently, and it was just boom, 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 190, 195 points, whatever it was, just nothing. I'll tell you, every other Summertown team was not hitting that 190, 195 point range. Not a one of them out of the 12. Okay? They were all basically new teams too, right? Anne-Marie? That year, basically, everybody was a new team.
We had 16 teams, and yes, they were all brand, it was our rookie year, everybody, 100%.
Yeah. And the Nashville team may have been the same way, but point being, all brand new teams of every age, and none of them were hitting that Nashville team thing. And I was watching one of them, and it was just, one little wobbly thing or another, because we only had 2 tables, so I got to see teams multiple times sometimes. And one team, if this one thing had just gone right, it would have been so much better. And first round, second, just didn't go right. Third round, it finally went right. They got like 205, 210 points. Those kids went absolutely nuts. But they earned that. Had they not done it on that third round, they would not have been in nearly as happy a state. Okay? But that's just part of the deal.
I think the best run I saw was when the Golden Girls were with you at State, and their robot went on that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
I think so.
The last 2 seconds pushed the other team off. I got that video.
Yep.
That was their last run, as a matter of fact. Those girls, I think everybody went nuts.
Okay, I'm going to skip back to page 5 for a second on the bottom half. And so there is a map. Now, I talked about this a little bit already, but on that overall map, they have yellow dashed lines around the 2 left and right home areas to show you exactly how that's defined. They have red and blue matching the red and blue on the mats to show where the launch areas are. So 2 independent launch areas, 2 independent home areas. The other nice thing on this one, especially for the referees, but hopefully for the coaches as well, is that all of the missions are now kind of ordered in a consistent way around the table. Okay? And so when we're going through the score sheet, mission 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're not bouncing back and forth all over the place. We're just sort of scanning around the table, which is going to make our lives easier. That may make it easier for you coaches and your kids to say, all right, if we're going to look at missions 2, 3, and 4 today, that's all going to be up in here. in this northwest corner. And then another week we can look at other missions in another part. Okay, so up on to page 7. In the middle of that page, they have an example mission layout, and this is kind of important because they are pretty consistent about how they do this now. And so each mission is going to have one of these layouts like they show in the green shaded area. It just won't have green shading on it. Okay? And so there will be pictures of the models that are related to that mission, the location where it is, all of that up at the top says not used for scoring. This is just to orient you with where you are on the board and kind of what's going on. Underneath that, there's 2 bullet points that says regular black text under the mission description lists the main requirements with X number of points are in bold red. You do that, as scored at the end of the match, you get those points as they are in bold red. If there are other things the referee sees as performed or completed, other points as described. Blue italic text is for very important added requirements, leniency, or other helpful facts. They show a set of 3 pictures down below that, each of them having their own examples of how many points that was in bold red, because sometimes you can kind of combine 2 things. Maybe you got a 30-point part and a 10-point part, and that can be a 30-point or a 40-point depending on how you actually run things. Okay, so at the bottom of page 7, we finally get down to the actual missions. And so equipment inspection is not a literal mission, but this is what Anne-Marie was asking earlier, of what's the rules on, where's the bonuses for how efficient they are, and how many parts they bring, okay? And in years past, it was, did your stuff fit into the small area in the East Home, or did it spill over and have to be in the large area of East Home? Since we got 2 homes and they're smaller homes, etc., rules are different this year. And so the inspection rule is now, if your robot and all your equipment fit completely in one launch area and are under a height limit of 12 inches during the pre-match inspection. Okay? So, this is probably a little bit more, it might be a little bit more generous than years past. Because this quarter circle probably has a little bit more square inches of area than the small area did previously, okay? And they've gone back and forth on, is it a 12-inch height or not, okay? But it is a 12-inch height this year. Now, check the rule book to see if it says anything differently. But all they got to do is just pile that stuff up together and fit it in the launch area, okay? They can still be touching it. You can have somebody bear hugging the equipment to keep it from spilling out of the launch area. I'm pretty sure that's still legal, okay? And honestly, that's a lot of space. Especially if you got new kids, they're going to be doing good to get, some missions done. They are not going to be going nuts with the equipment that they bring to the table, because they're just going to be getting their heads wrapped around this whole thing to begin with. But there's your answer for what it is. And bold red points right underneath that, it says 20 points, okay? So your kids have the absolute worst round ever. Nothing goes right. If they at least, were efficient enough to fit it all in there, there's 20 points just for showing up, okay?
After they do inspection.
After they have inspected.
Could you move it to?
You should be able to, because if the inspection occurs in only one launch area and it's pre-match, then you should be able to spread it out as you need to. Now, I have to make absolutely certain of that in the rule book, but my guess is that's fine. Okay? But again, something, I am not a lawyer, there is a rule book, and whatever the rule book says goes, and if I see something later that says, nope, I was wrong. Okay, Mission 1, Innovation Project Model. This one is a pretty easy one, usually. And so, on this one, you see that they says your model should represent the solution to your innovation project, okay? But for it just to be an innovation model, it doesn't have to be much, okay? The literal requirements on an innovation model are in the blue text right underneath that. design and bring a single innovation project model of your own to the match. In order to score, it must be made of at least 2 white Lego pieces and measure at least as long as 4 Lego studs in one direction. A pair of 4x1, or even a 4x1 and a 1x1 stuck to it is an innovation model. That will get you points as much as any other thing. Let the kids be creative. Let somebody get fired up about the construction of the innovation model and how much it means to them and everything else. I am all for that. It just doesn't count any different on points. Okay? I will listen to those stories of what that means to them all day. It just doesn't change their score. Okay. So that is what it takes to get a valid innovation model. Now, that one is not just free points though, like the inspection bonus is, okay? So, and again, look for the big red bold and what it describes. If your innovation project model is at least partly in the hydrogen plant target area. And so in the upper photo to the side of the innovation model, you see on the map where that is this dead center area with the H2s on the tanks. There is a black elliptical border around that, and again, we can go through the literal rule book and verify these rules as I'm remembering them, or these definitions as I'm remembering them. But what that should mean is for whatever their innovation model is, and I'm just going to pick one out of pieces over here. This is not a valid innovation model. Well, actually, be made of at least 2 white Lego pieces, 1, 2, and measure at least 4 in one direction. Okay, this is now my innovation model. Assuming that these count as white Lego pieces, and now it scores. Okay? Now, again, by the rules, at least partly in. This is completely in. It's inside the border. This is partly in, because it straddles the border. Again, subject to rule verification. But if you can zoom in on that, and you can see I've got a 32nd of an inch of one corner touching the border, subject to me verifying the definitions of borders and partly, I'm pretty sure that is partly in. There is all kinds of leeway on this mission. Okay? So in general, the border should count as part of the area, and partly in means at least one little bit of it. You know, and again, it doesn't have to be touching. Let me do a slightly different one. And put that right there. It's overhanging, but if it's breaking that boundary, as seen from the top, it's partly in. Even if none of it is actually touching inside. Now again, I'll check the rules, but I don't think in requires actual contact with the mat. But whatever the rules say, go. Watch that be the one that I get wrong. Okay. Mission 2, I'm going to leave that out there just in case we need it for scoring at the end of the match. Mission 2, the oil platform. Again, these are sort of designed to be kind of loose. And so they give you descriptions, and so if a fuel unit is in the truck, and how is that trip? That is this over here. Pull
straight up.
Pull straight up. Ah, yes. Oh, hey, look at that. If I hit it right, several of them go out. Okay? That'll happen sometimes. Okay? And so if a fuel unit is in the fuel truck, it says 5 each, so that's 5 per fuel unit. Bonus, if at least one fuel unit is in the fuel truck and the fuel truck is at least partly over the fueling station target, 10 points added. And so there's 3 examples down there, which is, they show it as a 5 plus 5 because you can see two different oil drums in there. There is a 5 plus 10, which would mean that they've got something inside the truck which we can't see, but it is at least partly over the station, and the fueling station is over here. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna, yeah, and so there's a little bit of a bump. You gotta pull the truck over, and then, yeah. And again, you kind of see that, yeah, you kind of see it there where they're using the tailpipe as their definition of partly in. That tailpipe is obviously not touching the mat. But it says partly over. So we'll check that. Okay. Other missions, energy storage, which is up here. If an energy unit, which are these little white, little bin-looking things, if an energy unit is completely in the energy storage bin, maximum of 3. So do we have more than 3 of these out here, or is it just the 3?
You'll have more when you do missions.
Aha,
You could get-
okay, all right.
There's 3 there.
So there's multiple, so max of 3. So your students are welcome to dump in more things as an insurance policy, but they're only going to get credit for 3, and they might get more points for putting them somewhere else. Again, read through all the missions, start to finish, with the kids. Read them forwards and backwards. Brainstorm with them for how they can arrange things in a creative way to get a lot of points. Okay? Because it may not be super obvious at first, but there are often, not loopholes, but clever ways that satisfy all the conditions. And so I'm just going to take one of these energy units, drop it inside there, and it says completely in the energy storage bin, 10 each. And if the energy unit is completely removed from the storage tray, and so we had a tray there, okay. And so if we take, and again, I'm not going to try and put my own ideas on this. I'm not going to tell you all the ways that this could be accomplished. I mean, rather than say, well, yeah, the robot's going to drag that thing out, it's going to pick it up and whatever, okay? The robot could, if possible, the robot has to do all the action when it's out on the table first, okay? So if we're going to be out here on the table, the robot has to pull the thing out. If you don't want to do anything else but stay out here, the robot's going to have to grab this thing out and put it somewhere else, okay? However, what does the second scoring condition actually say? If the energy unit is completely removed from the energy storage tray. Doesn't say where it gets removed, doesn't say how it gets removed, doesn't say that it has to get delivered back to the bin, it just has to be removed. Well, clearly the robot's got to go grab this, but if he brings it back into the home area, student can pull it out of the bin. What? You're catching on. Watch the rules. You've got this kid somewhere on your team, and if not, he's on the next team over. And you know which one he is. It's probably a he. I'm just saying, it was probably me. Back in the day. You've got one somewhere. It's like, well, if we do it this way, we do it and make that kid go through the rule book. If you think it's a sketchy strategy, make him go through there. Start, and you may have to go through it too, and you get to be dueling lawyers, okay? And he says, show me why I can't do that way. And you go through and you say, well, yes, young Mike, there is a rule that says, you can't reach out here and grab that when it's out on the table, and it's right there. We agree that's what that says? Yeah, okay, well, you can't do that. But if he comes back and says, but I can do it back here, I've read it, I've looked, and there's nothing that says I can't be called on that if it's back in the base. You say, that doesn't look right, and then you read it through, say, yep, that's what you can do, okay? I am occasionally available for emails or, the odd phone call for clarifications. But hopefully, doing all of this here is going to cut down on those this year. Okay. Solar farm up in. Why am I so bad at orienting myself on this board?
This is solar farm right
Oh,
here.
it's here
Yeah.
because there's nothing on it. Okay. Okay. So start the if an energy unit has been completely removed from its starting circle. Okay, completely and removed is going to be like the opposite of partly in. So completely removed means I better be able to see a little gap there. Okay. Bonus, if all three have been completely removed, you get an extra set of points. Okay. And so 1, 2 up here, and 3 is right there, and I moved it before. Okay. Smart grid. Raise your field's orange connector. Oh, this is the high five thing. Okay. And so it is a smart grid thing. The guys in our smart grid lab will love to know that they need to make things look exactly like this. And so raise your field's orange connector to complete the smart grid connection with the opposite field. Now, again, what if the other team doesn't do their thing? What if they're not actually making contact with each other and there's no way to pass electricity from one side of the board to the other? We'll say some other kid, possibly the same kid that has the inventive interpretations of rules that may or may not be correct. Okay? That's why these bullet points read the way they do. Okay? Does not say they have to be in contact. It just says have to be completely raised. Now, for these kinds of things, they tend to be kind of delicately balanced to where if you get them up to a certain point, they're just going to take care of themselves and slip over into position. There's not going to be any gray area. This is one of those. Okay? So when they get this, and again, it doesn't say how they have to do it. Okay? The simple, obvious thing is to have the robot basically grab this red piece and pull it south. They can do that. They can just smack the thing right on the back of the hand. No problem. Okay?
What if, and I don't know if the other team pulls theirs up and it happens to hit it, knocks it back, would that?
So it really looks the way that this is set up
That they probably
that
won't.
it's just not even gonna be
Because
possible.
I can see.
There should be a gap
Yeah.
there, is my guess.
Yeah.
Not having two tables butted up against each other, and this one is, well, there's a little bit of gap there. But yeah, and again, I wouldn't really slam it underneath the board there, but I think by the time you have a mat that's in the right spot, and a model in the right spot, and the right thickness, and it may be even another thing where, the other one, the fingers are gonna interlock with the other one, there's not gonna, even if they did have a little bit of north-south contact or overlap, I don't think they're necessarily gonna touch. But that would be that, there is a rule that says the other team doesn't get to cost the other team points, okay? And so, I'm gonna have to actually think about whether or not, it does say the smart grid model may not be touching team equipment at the end of the match, okay? Which means, again, there's a definition on equipment, but basically the stuff you bring to the table. Our stuff is mission models, your stuff is equipment. So you can't, for whatever reason, leave something out here holding the thing in place. Or if for whatever reason, your team thought it was a good idea to hang something up here and keep it pressing to make sure it stays up, stays up, stays up, stays up, stays up. No, you can't do that, okay? But in this particular model, it shouldn't even be necessary, because once you get it to a certain point, it just wants to fall over into that upright position. Okay. I will have to look for rules about is one team allowed to grab the other team's smart grid model and raise it into position for the other team and for themselves. That is a maybe. Because the other team benefits, well, actually both teams benefit from from that. One team may not benefit more, but if they really want the points and they can't necessarily trust the other team is gonna do it, they may say, no, we're gonna get all 30 on this one and we're gonna drag yours up along with ours. And you get 32, but we're gonna get 30 plus some more, and it's worth it to us. Okay. Hybrid car, if the hybrid car is no longer touching the ramp, and if the hybrid unit is no longer in the hybrid car, and so recharge the hybrid, if the hybrid unit is in the hybrid car. Okay, so no longer touching the ramp. So if that's set there, yeah. It's tricky. Yeah. And so, see, that was there, right? And then this was here?
No, it's up on the, right there.
Okay, right there, okay. So we trigger this, however we trigger it, and again, nothing says they can't grab the thing with the little robot pincer, nothing says they can't pick the thing up and drag it, okay? But again, the simple route is to hit this thing, bring it up.
Yeah, you've got to
And
bring
it's
it up.
going to be pretty easy probably to get that model loose. It's going to be pretty easy to get that one loose, but you may have to take some time to figure out how to corral it and make sure it doesn't go off somewhere that you can't deal with it. And so is it loose or not? Is the car loose or not? And it says no longer touching the ramp. Again, as long as... So for all practical purposes, the way that this thing is built, if I get the tires just on the ground, there's still a bare chance that it could touch with the back bumper. And so I got to bring it out just a little bit for it to be reliably off of there. But again, most people's robots are not subtle. They're going to drag that thing all the way up and the car's just going to, take a pine wood derby down to the southeast. We will try and make our tables level. Okay. Recharge the hybrid car by inserting the hybrid unit into the car. Does not say how you insert it into the car, just says you have to insert it. Okay, the wind turbine, maybe, but I would say that's going to be a really risky, not likely to happen, unless you, all right, you did it. That if there is a way of doing that reliably and mechanically, that's slick. You may find some YouTubes of people that do it reliably and mechanically. I try not to watch most of those because I got enough to focus on just with the game rules. Okay. Wind turbine. If an energy unit is no longer touching the wind turbine, 10 points each. And so this is our wind turbine. And so that has a neat thing with the ratcheting gear and everything there. So hit it. Although, let's see, let's reset this.
I think they load up here.
Oh, they do load up here. This is why you need mission model guys, because yeah, probably one goes there, one goes there, one goes there then. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that makes it a little more difficult for them to just grab all three of them.
You've got that rail there.
Yeah, you got a little bit, you got that rail that kind of captures the top one and the middle one pretty easily, not so much the bottom one. So, and again, I've been surprised by people's strategies in the past. Carolyn, occasionally likes to traumatize me with the first year that I was head referee, and it was an animal theme. And one team comes in, and this is the first year I'm a head referee. It was at the last minute. Our previous head referee had a family emergency, could not be there, and it turns out she never came back as head referee. And so I'm down there with 48 coaches and co-coaches and whoever else in the basement of the tournament area. And somebody said, "Hey, yeah, we got this one strategy that worked in the qualifier over in Knoxville, but we want to see if it's going to work here." And it was, yeah, okay, so there's this aquarium that this shark is in. And we're supposed to make sure that the shark doesn't hit the sides of the aquarium and then deliver it in the aquarium to another location. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay, cool. What's the thing? Like, yeah, so what we want to do is there's no rule against us, the robot, grabbing the shark out of the tank, right? Oh yeah, there's no rule against that. Yeah, okay, cool. And then we'd also like to take the tank and we're going to just drag it back into base. Okay, yeah, that's legal too, sure. Because again, my simple version of this is, well, yes, they are going to scoot the tank and the shark in, and just translate it along the table to the final destination. No, we're going to grab the shark. We're going to carry it back to base. We're going to grab the tank and bring it back to base too. Probably on the same trip, because this is one of those teams, okay? Okay, yeah, you brought them both back. Cool. All right, now what we're going to do, we're going to flip the tank upside down, and we're going to put the shark on top of the upended tank, because there's a rule that says the shark has to be touching the bottom of the tank. And then we're going to deliver the whole thing back out to the final destination, and there's no chance whatsoever that the shark is going to be touching the sides. And I get the choice of cranking off
That person's an evil genius.
of cranking off half of the coaches by saying, yeah, that sounds okay, or cranking off the other half of the coaches who just really, hey, yeah, that totally sounds workable. We should totally have our kids do that strategy in, maybe not the first round, but they should totally do that in round 2 or 3. And I'm going to crank off one or the other half of the room, and I decided to crank off the one half with the, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Okay, it doesn't sound reasonable, it sounds legal according to the rules. Okay?
It did.
That shark is dead, but in real life, but that's not what matters in this. It's the plain English reading of the rules, regardless of where that takes you, subject to the updates. Okay, so we somehow get these 3 energy units broke loose, so they are no longer touching the wind turbine. That one does not count. That one does not count. This one does count. Okay? So, again, they're not often subtle. So you may not have that problem, but you may want to take some precautions to make sure, whether that means you put a little tray underneath here that it can fall into and then you can grab them all off or whatever, or you just say, no, we know if we hit it this hard, this is where they're going to go. But that's just a matter of practice and thinking about it and taking your chances. Okay, watching television, mission 8, over here, doodly doo. If the television is completely raised, there we go. And if the energy unit is completely in the television slot, I guess that means the energy unit is up here.
I think it's got to load in that green thing like you had it. Because it starts.
Oh, does it start somewhere else?
Underneath there.
Oh.
It starts underneath there.
Oh, okay. And
you-
I kicked it over. Oh, and
And if you push
and
it too
wants
far,
to-
it'll come out. And I think it's got to stay in that green thing.
So it starts out back here under the table.
Mm-hmm.
And if I gently push it to there, it stays in there, and then I push it harder or farther, and now it comes up. Again, that may not be the only way to do it, but it's got to meet the scoring conditions at the end. It also says the watch TV model and the energy unit in the green TV slot, green TV slot, may not be touching team equipment at the end of the match. Can it be touching equipment during the match, during this mission? Yes, because that is not at the end of the match. So maybe that means, kind of like I was thinking, they have some jig back here that surrounds the thing, as long as
It's off.
they get it out of the way at the end of the match. And again, out of the way just means if you said we're going to strand our little wall of Legos that held this thing in, we're just going to bump it up 1/8 of an inch so it's no longer touching. I don't care if it's still out on the table. Subject to rules. I don't think there's a rule against leaving it on the table. All right, dinosaur toy. If the dinosaur toy is completely in the left home area, this is not the left home area that it starts in. Okay, so Again, what does that mean? It means the robot's got to take it from right area over to left area. Left home area, not launch area, anywhere in left home area, but completely in left home area. If the dinosaur toilet is completely closed, which makes me think that it doesn't start closed.
It starts down, and you put a fuel cell in
Okay,
there.
so it
and
starts
makes
down.
and it makes the head go up.
Oh, okay. Oh, because that sits
Yeah.
there and then that goes there. All right, let me just get a fuel thing. So then that is going to go.
It fits in right
Here's one.
there, and it raises it. It raises his head up. You got to go this way, I think.
Oh, okay. Yes, because it's a battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, okay. So then, okay, so is it an energy unit or is it a rechargeable battery? You get different points for different ones. Again, bullet points.
So that would mean you'd have to get one of these. Do you load it? Does it say where do you load that?
It absolutely
here,
does
or-
not say.
So you can load it either.
Again, so that's again, find that kid
Yeah.
that says, it doesn't say I can't do it this way. And possibly, if you've got the right two kids that aren't going to be at each other's throats, literally, find the other kid whose job it is to say, no, 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 no. This rule here says you can't do that. And it's not necessarily on you, although you should, take a role in it to make sure that, they don't get too up in each other's faces. Okay. Power plant number 10. That monster here. Okay. All right. If an energy unit is no longer touching the power plant, 5 each. And so what's my
Push
motion?
down.
Push down.
Putting on that thing on the front,
Okay.
and then you pull that hot bar up.
Aha. Yes. I saw this in June and then I've
I like
forgotten
this
it.
one.
Okay. All right. So push down for one, pull up for another one. Robot could do that in one trip if you've got enough pieces that are cleverly arranged to do that. If an energy unit, any of those three, is no longer touching the power plant, 5 each. If all three are no longer touching the power plant, 10 added. Okay? So bonus points for getting them all cleared out. Hydroelectric dam up here, number 11, just northeast of the southwest or right side base. If the energy unit is no longer touching the hydroelectric dam,
You gotta. It goes right there.
Okay.
And you pull that up, and the water comes down and knocks.
right, yeah, because that's water, and yeah, okay. Okay. If the energy unit is no longer touching, 20 points. And so, yeah, the three pictures there that are 0, 0, and 20 are different ways that things could work or go wrong. Water reservoir, if a looped water unit is completely in the water reservoir touching the mat, 5 each. And so this is a looped water unit, completely in and touching the mat.
So this
Okay?
time it has to be tactily touching, where this one could be hovered. This
Yep.
one has to be touching the mat, because
Yes.
that touching.
Yeah. Which means no buckets to leave them in and have them in there.
So like this, that ain't gonna
That-
count.
well,
'cause
one, that's
it's
not
not
completely
in, and
in.
it wouldn't be touching.
And
either,
it's not
right?
touching. So, the other example,
Well,
like
what
I
about
said,
this?
not
would-
completely in.
Not completely.
Would you get points because some of it's in?
No. So bullet point says 5 each if a looped water unit is completely in, meaning nothing of it is extending
So it
past the
couldn't-
border,
It couldn't fall over.
and touching the mat. So if this loop is, and we're going to basically just use probably this outline as the guide. But like right there, it's probably not completely in, even if it is touching. Now,
It's in, but that's not touching.
well,
you get extra points for
but
hanging.
second bullet point on mission 12. if a looped water unit is placed on a single red hook, 10 each hook. Now, and there actually is a challenge update about this. Okay, so, first question. 5 points each. Is a looped water unit completely in the water reservoir touching the mat? How many of those are completely in and touching the mat? 0, 1, 2, or 3?
0.
I'd say 0 right now.
0, because definitely not touching the mat. Okay? All right, now, if a looped water unit is placed on a single red hook, 10 each hook, how many points?
20.
20. Why?
Because there's only 2 hooks.
There's only 2 hooks. This third one is an insurance policy. This third water unit is an insurance policy, not extra points.
So if you
And there
have,
is a challenge
so you'd be
update
better
that
off
says that.
doing that.
Absolutely.
what about, so, okay, so then even if you had one here, it's not gonna matter because you have to have all 3?
No.
Or could you have 2
These
here
are
and
independent
then-
scoring conditions.
Okay, so then you could have 2 up here, that's
that'd be
20, and this
25.
is 5.
And then that would be another 5.
That would be 25. then.
Right, and this here would be 20.
would be 20.
So to get the maximum.
And this out here is 20. And then this is, well, right now it's 10.
And that would be,
Now it's 15.
Yeah.
And there's several example photos down there. Again, the photos are not the authoritative. Okay. YouTube videos are never authoritative. Forum postings are never authoritative. What other coach said is never authoritative. Let me say, not authoritative in and of themselves. What I say is only authoritative in light of the rule books and if it actually got to me as a head ref, in terms of appeals and whatever. Rarely ever gets to that. But, all of those should be treating the 32-page PDF of the robot game and the currently 4-page challenge updates as these are the rules for the robot game. Okay. Mission 13, power to X. Surplus renewable energy can be used to convert water into hydrogen gas. And so if an energy unit is completely in the hydrogen plant target area, max of 3. And so these guys, right? Oh. Which reminds me, if we have Andy Mark tables, we should absolutely dual lock them down to the supporting tables. Because I just bumped this one by leaning up over it to, what are your supporting tables? Okay, are we okay to stick dual lock adhesive to them?
We'll be thinking about that.
Okay. Because I'm not the lightest dude anymore, but I had to give a team a whole lot of points back last year. Perhaps I could have not given them the points back, but I did bump the table. It did allegedly mess up their gyro sensor in a whole bunch of missions. I got nothing to dispute that. I'm not going to inspect their code for was it actually using the gyro sensor. The gyro sensor was there. Was it likely to work? I don't know. Not my call, but that was a lot of points they got back for that. So yeah, if we can keep these, the state tables, yeah, they're all plywood and 2x4s, and they don't move. They are frictioned to their bases so hard that, and especially when there's 2 of them bolted and screwed together, they don't move. These move, especially in quantity 1. Okay, so if an energy unit is completely in the hydrogen plant target area, max of 3.
You really got to pay attention to those completelys and partiallys, don't you?
Absolutely. Now again, completely in. I'm gonna again, anything I do is still subject to rule interpretation. How many of those are completely in and in a scoring position?
All of them.
All of them. Because there is no rule that says touching the mat. There is no rule that says can't be touching equipment. Your innovation model is equipment. So actually, come to think of it, that's kind of a clever thing to do. If your innovation model just happens to look like a bucket, You can use that to hold energy units. All right, toy factory over here. All right, do. If an energy unit is at least partially in the slot in the back or in the red hopper, now, if the mini dinosaur toy has been released, that's 10. Okay, so that should be 10 right there because I released a little dinosaur toy. Okay. If an energy unit is at least partially in the slot in the back of the toy factory or in the red hopper. So right now it is. Okay. Now, if for whatever reason they do this, put him back there. Now, that right there, that is scoring positions. I haven't released the dinosaur, the toy, but I do have an energy unit
There's the part.
that's at least partly in the slot in the back or partly in the red hopper. I got 2 of these now.
So
One
it
is
would count
partly
for
in the
both?
hopper. Yes, 5 each, max of 3. Read the rules.
Because that, again, it's not completely, it's partly.
Partly
Yeah.
in.
Partly in, yeah. Can it be, is it saying partly in this too?
Yep.
Because I
Wow.
see these
Yep. That's another partly in.
partly in.
So could you have another one that's completely in?
Absolutely. I mean, again, yeah. Well, okay. That's why it says at least partly in. At least partly in means partly in or completely in.
Max of 3.
Max of 3.
Max.
Okay, okay.
Now, this is not the optimal condition yet. You know, again, if I was just really going to wail on this one, I would want to have at least 3 of them here in some position or another. But I'd also want to release the dinosaur.
So that's going to be max points right there.
Yes, and so would this, because I'd max out at 3.
You've already maxed out, yeah.
But you wouldn't have to, that last one that went in.
No, the 4th one, no. That's
doesn't
insurance,
have-
if anything.
just- Okay. To make sure your dinosaur comes out.
Sure.
So that's.
Yeah, so I mean, in theory, all right, so let's reset the dinosaur. Roll him on up in there.
I was gonna keep them. Here, you can go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to be the team that's just gonna dump, 3 of those through the hopper.
Oh, wow.
At one
Okay,
time.
at one time.
See, I wouldn't even thought of that.
Neither would I.
I was just doing it just to dump things in at once. I about guarantee it's going to release the dinosaur.
Wow.
Now, there is a slim chance that one of those could pop out.
But
So maybe you dump in
you're,
4.
You're good now because
I'm good now. But again, I can see right there, yeah, that's holding on by
It's teetered.
a little bit of luck and statistical.
So you put
Chance.
3 in and that's how it landed?
That is how it landed with 3. Now, if I did, again, I'm just guessing. But let's reset it and try. Let's try 4. Now they all stayed
There you
in,
go.
but I can certainly see. Let's try 7. Actually, let's try 9,
Wow, we're really going
10,
there.
11, 12. Whatever the guide says we've got.
Well, you got them in the hopper.
Yep, and now they're stuck in the hopper, but
But you made sure you got your 3.
There you did. Yes, you did.
now is that the best place to put those units? Not necessarily.
Because that's still just.
I mean, it's
25 points.
definitely not the best place to put the remaining 9.
Yeah.
No, because you have your
Because you got other places you could be
center,
putting things.
yeah, and your dinosaur and
So the most you're scoring is 25.
Yeah.
this just looks like a lot of fun. The last board that I liked this much was the space mission board. That was the first year we did this, remember?
All the mission types just blur after a while. I only remember the animal one because of the head ref meeting, or the coach meeting that I had that first time. I don't remember any of the rest of the missions on that one, just the shark. All right, doodle-doodle-doo. 5 each for if an energy unit is completely in the rechargeable battery, which is
And
this
that
dude
is
right
here.
here beside the toy factory.
So it would just be, this is the rechargeable, and it would be.
That
just
is an
one.
energy unit.
Oh, this is an energy.
And so the rechargeable battery target area is this big black
Okay.
area here.
Are you supposed to
Oh, can you-
start with this in there? Looks like.
Uh,
Oh, there's a
Scroll
circle in the middle.
there is a circle there, but the field setup guide will say whether or not there's supposed to be one in there or not. Quite possibly. I don't remember where I stole all these from originally.
So
But yeah,
max
if it
of
start-
3.
If it starts out there, and the team has to do absolutely nothing except just let it sit there, that's points. If the field setup guide says you stick one of those things in there.
So a max of 3 mean, and do
Looks
you
like-
have to have it in the center?
Max of 3, completely in.
They've stacked that, doesn't it? Looks like they've stacked one
Yeah.
on top of that.
Absolutely, because again, completely in, no mention of touching the mat. Again, there is this persistent mention of energy unit of energy units in this case, stored in the area, may not be touching team equipment at the end of the match.
So as long as they're in
So
here.
they can bring a bucket, they can bring a corral, or whatever, but it cannot be touching the bucket, cannot be touching the corral at the end of the match. Bring a bucket and dump it. Bring a corral, lift the corral out of the way and move on.
So the way I'm looking at that, it's saying that is not an energy unit. So that's not.
Hold up.
From what this says
Yeah.
right here. And this would just be 5 points because you have to take. your
Oh,
energy
okay.
unit.
So yeah, now I see that, and again, it's the definition of energy unit. Yeah, the rechargeable battery is not an energy unit.
So
Okay.
this is
And
out
so
of
this
there?
is probably the rechargeable battery, which explains why it wasn't there because we moved it into the dinosaur earlier. So that is not an energy unit. And so that shows in that first photo down below that that the way they show it, which is this, it's this, is a 0-point condition.
Because
Because it's not completely in for what you delivered, the energy unit, and the other thing is not an energy unit.
So ideally, we want this out anyway to put in him.
Because
right?
it buys you nothing
Yeah.
to be in there.
And we want him in here.
Ideal. I think that's the ideal condition.
Yeah.
Again, have you and the kids that you know who they are go through the books. It's like, okay, for any given piece of mission model, what is our best case scenario for where we could put it for points?
So like, this would be 15 points then?
Yes.
But if it's still in there, it's not going to affect
Nope.
this at all.
Nope. It does not affect it.
And you don't have to have these in the middle, even though the
Nope.
circle's there.
Just needs to be in the border.
This will start in the middle, right?
Yep.
And we'll have to retrieve
Whatever the field setup guide
and
says.
then we
is where it is.
retrieve it to put it in here. So that may or may not be in there when we do this. Put
Sure.
3 in there.
Yeah.
So there's only one rechargeable?
Right.
Okay. And then the other one?
I mean, that's how I'm seeing it anyway. Again, I have not gone through the definitions of all of these pieces
Yeah, it's hard to keep 'em.
exhaustively.
I know these are energy units. That's
Yeah. Okay, so then the last thing is precision tokens. Like I said, they start with the match with 6 of these little red discs. And then the last mission description says, if you interrupt the robot outside a home, the referee removes 1 token. Okay, so they interrupt, I remove 1 token. They now have 5 tokens.
Where do we keep these on the board though?
We may just end up having, it's either going to have to go like you shown in like a northwest or northeast corner
Okay.
of the home area maybe. It may just be what we've done in the past would be referee holds on to the stack in the
Okay.
beginning and it's all stuck together. And then as an interruption happens, the referee peels one off, puts it in their pocket, hands it to the assistant or whatever, and whatever the referee's got left that's stuck together, that was not broken apart, is what they got.
be hard to drive anything up in this.
It
area
would,
anyway.
but again,
Yeah.
I'm okay to keep a set of these in my hand. Now, if you look at the scoring conditions for the precision tokens, if they've got 1 left, it's 10 points, 2 left, 15, and then 25, 35, 50, and 60. they had 1 interruption penalty. Did that cost them anything in terms of these precision tokens to have 1 interruption?
Doesn't look like it.
It absolutely did not. In some years past, it used to. Okay.
So you get one.
But the
free
last
remove?
few years, you kind of get 1 free interruption.
Oh, wow.
Again, be cognizant of the rules here of don't cheese it by saying we're going to interrupt it in lieu of a timer, a sensor, or a whatever, where your brain and your reflexes are, the kids' brains and reflexes are taking the place of a sensor or a program step. That, I know that will be an explicit rule, and that's it for the missions. And so we are now up to page 16, which is the rules, the glossary, and all that. This is the stuff that your rules lawyers need to be going over just every day, probably. So this is page 16 of the Robot Game Guide. Okay? And they've refined this over the last 22 years that I've been doing this. To try and make this clearer and clearer as they go. So the big red important up there, all robot game wording means precisely and only what it says. If a detail is not mentioned, it does not matter, subject to other rules, okay? And so again, that's where you're gonna get these clever kids that come up and say, well, what if I did this? It doesn't say I can't, and yeah, it sounds weird, but it says I can do this, it says I can do this, it says I can do this. If I do all 3 of those one after the other, this is my end result. And I was not barred from doing any of them a step at a time, it must be okay. Again, you gotta go through the rules on that, okay?
Now, what's nice is, this year they didn't send us quite as many books, engineering notebooks and
Okay,
rule
they should have
books.
sent, some
Well,
per team, I thought, but.
Yeah, but normally in years past, they sent us more.
Okay.
So what's nice is this is online, so all the rule books,
Oh, yeah.
everybody can have
The
access
rule
to it. I
books
know.
have always been online.
Yeah.
We make our own printed copies. I wind up, before we have the championship, and if I do the qualifier down here too, we'll probably do it that way too, where I'll go into the PDFs of the score sheets, and I'm gonna mark in, update 2 refers to this mission. It's in contrasting red text or whatever, so I can see it, of like, okay, I know what it says in the rule book, but you gotta remember this also applies too, okay? And we will I'll mark up the rule book with update 4 relates to this mission. Make sure, the referee, that you go back and look at that too.
And that is what I got to, and I just scanned that QR code this.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Where is that QR code?
Okay. Right there.
Let me
The
go
one that
ahead
says
and put
challenge
that there.
updates.
And that takes you to the update.
The little 4-page PDF, yeah.
This way, when I go through and I'm going to give Carolyn a copy of this, and for other people who are watching it, they can just use that QR code. And
Oh, yeah, yeah. And again, every bit of that is on the main First Lego League Challenge site for under firstinspires.org. Okay, so if a situation arises that makes the referee's decision unclear or hard to call, you get the benefit of the doubt, okay? And, I will not say that other referees are going to do it exactly the same way I do. I have one referee, I love him, he's been doing this about as long as I have and refereeing for probably longer. He is very by the book. Nope, that 64th of an inch matters, and you are just barely outside the line, I'm not going to give it to you. Now, me, I'm a big hippie. If I see a 64th of an inch, I'll be honest, if it's one of those teams that's already having a 400-point round, that 64th of an inch, I might or might not, I'll probably give it to them. If it's a team that is just at the verge of a breakdown, and that's the only thing that went right, and there's a 64th of an inch somewhere, or, okay, clearly a 16th, maybe even an 8th, yeah. But then, I'm also gonna guys, do not assume that this is going to apply on other tables. I am being extra generous on this one because I know you guys could have gotten it there and just that one little thing, I'm not doing them a favor exactly, I'm like, oh yeah, that had to hurt getting that close. And it not quite getting there. I feel it. But next round, adjust to make it a little bit more reliable. And then I'm not putting anybody else on the spot for sticking with my, loose hippie rules. Okay, so the glossary. These terms show up all over the mission descriptions. If you have not read the glossary, you are not going to have a clear picture of what some of those missions mean. And so, like it says, it cannot be touching equipment at the end of the match. Well, what's equipment? Your team says. If you haven't read the glossary, or the team hasn't read the glossary, they're going to come up with weird ideas for what equipment is. Right here is my definition of equipment. And it's real simple English. Everything the team brings to the match. Is there robot equipment then? Yes or no?
Yeah, because they have to.
They brought it to the match. It's equipment. Is there innovation model? Equipment. Yes, they brought it to the match. Are any of the little jigs and attachments and everything else they bring? If they brought it, it's equipment. If they did not, and then the opposite of that, logic class time. If they did not bring it to the table, is it equipment? No. It is something else. It's a mission model. It's a whatever. Okay. The field, the border walls and everything inside. They call out the border walls because that keeps you, that allows you to touch the border wall, to drag along it or whatever. But the border wall in its entirety is also part of the field. And everything inside them. The map, the mission models, the home areas. Okay? That's why they don't say it's everything on the vinyl. No, it's everything inside the border walls. Okay? Now, I guess technically if it's on the border wall, well, no, inside, this is a border wall. That is a 2x4, a 2x3, or this little plasticky thing for the handy marks, okay? The walls and everything inside them. So if there's something that's like outside, on the outside edge, I would say that is not part of the field, okay? But if it's on top, inside, or in the interior, that is part of the field.
Like this, that would be in the field because it's over the.
Yeah. Okay, interruption. That shows up too. When the technicians, the kids on the team, interact with the robot or anything touching it after launch. Oh, what's launch? Yeah, we define launch here in a second, okay? So they don't have these in exact order. It looks like they have them, yeah, they got them alphabetical. And so that makes it a little bit easier if there is a term that you need to look up. But it is not we define this so that we can define this so that we can define this. It is a little bit more bouncing around on that, okay? So, interruption, if they interact, does not mean touch, does not mean whatever, but, this robot is supposed to be autonomous. The kids, we know the kids aren't doing remote control, they're not doing any of that kind of stuff. But technically, aside from the fact that remote control is just straight up a rules violation, if it was otherwise allowed, it would technically, under this rule, be an interruption. It's not allowed. But also, they don't have to touch the robot. They could touch anything touching the robot. Typically, a mission model or another piece of equipment, that's an interruption. Launch. When technicians activate the robot from completely within a launch area to move autonomously. Okay, now, I got to consider the ramifications on some of this. But if your team just brings up a regular robot, no extra alignment jigs or anything to get it set up in a particular location, what does that tell you about where in terms of this 3D volume that robot can be before they do a launch? Can it hang outside this red or this blue area?
No.
No. Because activate the robot from completely within a launch area to move autonomously. To move autonomously means no remote control, none of that stuff. So guess what? That sort of takes care of it. Well, do we get to remote control it? Well, no, because it's not autonomous. And if it's not autonomous, it's not a launch. And if it's not a launch, it's not a scoring mission.
And extension pieces can't be hanging over this red line?
We will check that,
Okay.
because this says activate the robot from completely within a launch area. Now, that would be equipment. I'm pretty certain the equipment needs to stay within the launch area too. It may be that equipment has to stay in home, but again, there's gonna be a rule. This
That's
is
what I
just the
figured.
glossary.
I was fixing to ask, so this back can't hang over either because you're out
That's
of
what we're
launch
gonna
area.
check. Like I
Okay.
said, this is a glossary, not a rule set
Okay.
yet. But that's the definition of launch. Match 2.5 minutes, complete as many as you can to earn points. Mission, 1 or more tasks to complete for points. Do them in any order, any combination. Precision tokens, the little red waffles, they are free points, but you can get removed. See outside home section for more detail. Robot, your controller and any equipment combined with it by hand and intended to not separate from it except by hand, okay? So basically, anything that you're attaching that is not, let's just call it for lack of a better term, loose, okay? So a bucket that you are holding on to with your robot to then deliver out, and maybe you bring it back, maybe you don't, the bucket is not the robot. The arm or the grabbers or whatever are part of the robot. The motors, the sensors, all that stuff, part of the robot if it's not designed to separate from it except by hand. Technicians, team members that are up at the table and who are handling the robot during a match, which means handling it usually in home or in launch, or they're interrupting it. Okay. New this year, this will matter for, well, the new coaches, you'll never know the difference. Old coaches, there are now 2 home areas and 2 areas to launch from. 4 technicians are allowed on the field, and we've updated all the rules to account for the new thing. But, they said in June at the first partner conference that, they want to get more kids into the robot game. And two at a time tagging in and out is just fewer kids that get a full 2.5 minutes at the table, okay? Again, you want to do different kids in different matches, or it's up to the teams really, but you can swap out people between matches, you can swap out people during a match.
It takes a lot of time though, there's not a lot of room on one side. So I think
Right.
what they did here, I really like this idea. I can't wait to see how it works.
Okay, so then we go on to page 17, before the match equipment. And this is where we get into the actual rule set rather than just the glossary. Okay, so equipment includes everything teams bring to the match, such as the robot, any attachments and accessories, and the team's innovation project model. So again, that's the straight definition of equipment from before, everything they bring to the table, okay? This section explains what the robot and the accessories can be built from. So all equipment must be Lego-made building pieces, original factory condition, except that string and tubes can be cut to length. Non-electric Lego pieces are allowed from any set and use as many as they like.
Okay, hold on, let's clarify
Yep.
that. So, if you're looking at like, let's say, and I'm just gonna use Jurassic Park as an example.
Okay.
Jurassic Park may have a vehicle. Can I use those vehicle pieces to put on my robot and drive it around?
Okay,
Because it is from a different,
so first
Lego
question
piece.
is it Lego?
yes,
Yes. Is it non-electric?
yes.
Okay. Non-electric Lego pieces are allowed from any set.
Okay.
And teams may use as many as they like. So I like to call that, if it is a structural piece, it's open season.
Because I mean, there's some pieces that have like logos on there. or
Absolutely.
Pictures or.
If this makes it fun for them, if this, especially for the innovation project model.
Decorate your robot.
I'm sorry?
Decorate your robot.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, then point 3 is the electric parts. Electric Lego equipment is allowed only as described and shown below. They show it with Spike Prime, with Spike Essential, EV3, and NXT and RCX. All the same basic rules regardless of your microcontroller. Maximum of 1 controller in any match, okay? That means regardless of any other tag in, tag out, or anything else, or wherever stuff is gonna sit, bring 1 total controller to a match. Can you bring 2 controllers to the event?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you swap controllers from round 1 to or match 1 to match 2?
Yes.
Absolutely. Can you bring 2 controllers to match anything? No. Okay? A lot of this is designed to sort of put real engineering constraints on these teams so that it's not okay, yes, teams that have a lot more resources and time and budget, yeah, they can do a lot of stuff that less resource teams can't do. Okay, that is unfortunately still how it is. But for this part, for the timed part, we put the constraints on there to kind of put everybody on a relatively even footing for this part. Okay, so one controller in any one match. Swap them out as much as you want between matches, between your three, what I call 3 rounds. Okay, motors, maximum of 4 of any mix in any one match. Can you bring extra motors to the event? Yes. Can you use different motors, round 1 to round 2? Yes, you can. Can you bring 5 motors to round 1? No. Doesn't matter what they're attached to, doesn't matter how they get stored or anything else, maximum of 4 motors. Sensors, only touch and force, color, distance, ultrasonic, and gyros are allowed any mix and number in any one match. Bring as many sensors as you want, as long as it's one of those types of sensors. Swap them in and out as much as you need to. Yes?
Remind them that if they have a color sensor, they'll need to tell their breath.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, if there is a color sensor, if there is a light sensor, and I have gotten bit on this in the past, and I had a very polite team show me in the rule book where I had messed up, and there was still time to correct it for them. Because I'm in the mindset, because we don't see color and light sensors that much anymore, okay? There are some missions that were color-based, and your option was either to read the field at the first of the match and pick one or another program if you weren't going to color sense, or you'd have to color sense to know you were in the right spot. Because we'd randomly rearrange the colors on some of these. The light sensors get used for like track following robots to follow the little black lines, or to know that they've crossed this border or whatever, depending on how sensitive it is, okay? Now, there is a rule that says, teams, you own this launch area and this home area before the match, but you don't own the rest of the map. With one exception, and this is where I got screwed up, was teams can't necessarily assume that the lighting conditions out at the table are the same that they are on the practice table, same in the pit, same as anything else. Okay? So there is an explicit exception to that that says teams can take their robot, typically we're literally going to take our robot out here by hand, set it on the black part here, poke, poke, poke. That's what black looks like. Move it over to the white section, poke, poke, poke. That's what white looks like. And if there was some other, I don't think there's any color specific mission this time, but if they wanted to see what red, green, and blue looked like, or orange, or whatever, calibrate the sensors out there and then take the robot back and do the rest of their setup. Okay? I screwed that up at a championship. I literally told the team with full confidence of a multi-year referee and head referee, no, you can't do that. Of course not. Like, they had their rule book with them. They said, oh, okay. But internally, like, no, we're supposed to be able to do this. Now, they did not pitch a fit. They did not have. They may have grabbed their coach to verify. I don't remember, but nobody was yelling or anything else. They said, hey, just got a second? Yeah, of course I got a second. Yeah, right here. It's like, oh, dang it. You're right. We still got time, even if we didn't have time. And it was like, hey, is everybody ready? It's like, no, we're not ready. Hold off for a couple minutes, and we do it. Okay. So yeah, they do get to color calibrate and light calibrate. 4, teams can use Lego wires, 1 controller battery pack, or 6 AA batteries and 1 micro SD card. Use any software or programming languages. Robots must be autonomous during the match. There's yet one other reason that you can't do remote control in this literal rule here. No remote controllers of any type are allowed. Teams may bring 1 sheet of notebook paper per home area. Notice they're now saying per home area, not just a total number, so that the kids can have their notes. That does not count as equipment. Again, an exception. Did they bring it to the table? Yeah, it's equipment. Yeah, it's equipment. But yeah, this specific piece of paper on each side does not count as equipment because it says so. Additional or duplicate mission models are absolutely not allowed. So you bring your unique stuff with your robot. You do not bring extra mission models. And if you do, if we notice them, it's going to be, yep, take that back. put it in somebody's pocket, get it away from the board so that there's not somebody, trying to stick the battery into the dinosaur that's not our battery. Okay.
The sheet of paper, does it matter where that sheet of paper is on the board?
Doodly 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 doo. They may bring a sheet of paper per home area. It does not count as equipment. They can certainly be holding it. They should be able to put it in their launch area. They should be able to put it in their home area. They should not be putting it anywhere else
But it doesn't
outside of
count
launch home or
toward-
just in their own hands.
That doesn't count toward the bonus of it being in the one launch area for the 20 points, because it's.
Right, because this is not equipment. So the piece of paper does not count to their fit it all in the launch area and 1 foot tall.
But if, like, let's say we were to put that piece of paper on the side.
As long as it does.
If I find a piece of paper.
No, I mean on the side of the actual robot itself, so that they can read off something. Would that be?
I don't see a reason why they couldn't, but that would only be useful when the robot is not running. Or do you mean they're going to attach a piece of paper to the robot for the entire 2.5 minutes?
As long as it doesn't fall off.
As long as that's the first thing, as long as it doesn't fall off. So technically it says it does not count as equipment, but
So,
just gonna say, please don't.
the one thing that you may consider.
Because I'm trying,
It may get stuck in something though. Wow, that is the first.
okay, I'm just thinking of it, if it's me as the kid, I want the full size 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I want stuff written on both sides of it if I need to. I want it in a font that is still readable, but I want all the information on it that I need in a clear fashion, and that's not gonna work. And again, they can leave it sitting over here on one side or the other. I cannot imagine an advantage to having it taped to the robot.
Okay.
There might be some other rule that I'm missing the interpretation of that
Well, we
says
haven't gone through it.
don't do it.
Okay.
Okay. Doodly doodly doo. Before the match setup. We are now on page 18 of the PDF. Okay. And so the drawing there shows the 2 different home areas in yellow borders. Notice that it does include the quarter circle in each corner of the mat and the other rectangular area to either side of the mat. So that is home. Left launch area is bordered in that red dash, and right launch area is bordered in that blue dash. Okay. All events, matches are likely to be run on official tables. Before the match begins, they will need to teams will pass pre-match inspection and set all their equipment in place. So, all the equipment fits into, all the team's equipment must fit into the 2 launch areas and fit under a height limit of 12 inches. So there's your overlap, there's your bleed over rule. Okay. We used to have a rule last year that says if you were in the rectangular area to the left of the mat that was with the launch area, you got 1 set of points. But if you fit in the other area that was the bigger area, you got a different set of points or none. Okay? So now it's everything has to fit into both launch areas combined in under 12 inches. That's a huge amount of space.
Yes.
But if you can fit it into 1 launch area only, either one, doesn't care, they're the same size, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Fit it into 1 foot high, that's when you get the bonus points. Okay. Teams will not be given additional storage space. Storage tables and trolleys are not allowed. Everything must stay on the table or in the hands of a technician. Okay, now I'm wondering if that is something we can interpret about your piece of paper attached to the robot. It is not in the hands of a technician anymore. It is not staying on the table because it's staying on the robot, but it's not really equipment.
Right.
But this doesn't say equipment must stay on the table. It says everything must stay on the table. Doodly doodly doo. Equipment stored on the table may extend past the left and right walls as needed. Okay, so it can overhang outside. I would not recommend it because sometimes the referees are going to be, or the teams are going to be all over that side of the table. You don't want them to break something by bumping into it. After the team has passed inspection, they'll be given a couple minutes to set up. At state, that usually in non-COVID criteria years meant that we would have our MC come around and interview each team of the 4 that we're about to run. That gives us our time for that. But they're at least given a couple minutes. They start by distributing their equipment in loose mission modules between the 2 home areas. So at that point, divide the stuff up as needed from the 1 or 2 inspection areas. Get it arranged. Okay, that is the places where the kids can hand stuff back and forth with each other by hand, but because it's before the match. Doodly 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 doo. Some mission models must start in a specific home area, like the dinosaur has to start over in the right home area. Next, they place their robot into the launch area they wish to start from. Any remaining time should be used to adjust the robot and equipment to calibrate sensors on any part of the map. So if they want to calibrate the barn for whatever reason, they can. Okay. But that's the rule I got called out on. Again, I'm going to keep harping on that one because it's one where I literally screwed up. And I'm going to keep remembering that one from here on out. And to ask the referee to check anything on the field, which typically means, things like, is this mission model, they're looking at where the model is versus the outline. Like, hey, that looks like that got a little bit out of position from last match. Oh, yep, you're right. Yep. Move that in place. There it goes. Okay. Or things like, when we were doing this at the qualifier or on our practice or whatever, this model here was always kind of sticky. Can you show us that this is nice and loose? Yes, I can. Okay. So again, from the coaches and the team's perspective, be polite. I don't demand pleases and thank yous as such. They never hurt. But we're all there to help the kids have a good day and a good time. Okay, so after the adjustment, then number 4, team members must then divide into 2 groups. So prior to that, kids can wander around, help each other get set up, whatever it is. But at a certain point before go time, it's split in half and never cross over again. These members cannot switch sides during the match. If possible, position 2 at each area. All other team members must stand back. So we'll normally have a little painter tape line for all the cheerleading section to stand behind. Okay? Teams may never have more than 2 at a time in a single area, but they can tag in and tack out with technicians on their side at any time. Now, we gotta have to think about that a little bit, but I'm thinking we're reading that as the cheerleading section is broken up into 2 groups as well, so that you can't have somebody, you should not be able to have somebody tag in and out and swap sides. What we may end up doing is saying, there's 2 cheerleading sections, pick your section, that's the section you can tag in and out on if you so choose.
Is there any rules against excessive cheering? I know last year we had a team that was a little louder than the rest of the teams, actually scared our team.
That's the first I've heard of it.
Okay.
We will have to go through this.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there's some gracious professionalism stuff, maybe. On the other hand,
kids were
that's really
they
hard.
Were screaming their other team's name, was waiting until they were programmed to scream a name, and then they were freaking out trying to catch up with where they were at. It caused them to get disoriented. We worked on
So, I guess the one thing is, okay, were they more or less exuberantly cheering for their... Understood the volume, yes. Was this volume that was directed at their own team as a, hey, encouraging, let's go, and hey, you got that one, good job, or was this directed, it was directed at the other team. Hey, you guys, we just got this one, where are you at? Okay, that's not...
No, it was like a pep rally, I think.
Yeah,
they had brought people from their school.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing and wonderful. They were treating it kind of like a pep rally when you would, it wasn't like, let's wait for them to score.
Yeah, on the one hand, it's not a chess match.
Right.
Oh, those get really heated.
They can, but they never get loud.
They won't kick you out if you get solid. That's true.
So, I mean, on the one hand, I would tell the team, okay, yeah, be prepared
Yeah.
for that kind of situation. You know, and again, I don't want to get into the kids that might have like, you know, sensory processing issues or something like that, where it's like a legitimate
Sure.
thing. And in that case, okay, if you have one of those as a coach, if it was me, I would have no problem at least going to the team that was on the opposite side of the table and saying, hey, just so you know,
Yeah. Okay. I see what
I
you're
got a kid that has a legitimate issue if things get loud. Now again, that kid's got the opportunity for earplugs, for headphones, for whatever, okay? You know, because again, I ain't all right in the brain either, you know.
Well, nobody knows unless you say something.
Right.
So common courtesy goes both ways.
Yeah.
Letting somebody know that there's a.
Right, and so if you got a kid with an actual legitimate medical issue, okay, then talking to the other coach and say, hey, just so you know,
Okay.
you know, it's not that you can't cheer, it's not, you know, and we've already prepared him
Sure.
or her, you know, but, you know, just so you know, just, you know, do what you need to do, but, you know, if it's ear splitting, it's gonna be an issue, it could be an issue for one of our kids, and so, you know, keep it below ear split. I think that would be reasonable. Okay, all right, so, all right, doodly 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 doo. All right, so I think at this point we are up to during the match inside home, and inside home again means we are talking about the quarter circle area, that's the launch area, and the rectangular area off the side of the map on either side. All right, home is the team's safe space. Home is split into two areas. Each home area contains its own launch area, that's the quarter circle. Technicians may use their hands on the robot equipment and mission models when these are completely within their home area. Completely within, not hanging over onto the table. If they are retrieving something, then again, we got to check the rules on some of these, but sometimes that means they need to make sure that whatever they're dragging back in needs to make it put completely inside the area before they touch it.
Okay.
Okay, but that will be explicitly called out in the rules here in a minute. But once a certain thing is completely within the home area, it is open season for manual manipulation by the kids. When launching, technicians may not keep anything from moving, and the robot in anything it's about to move must be completely inside the launch area. Okay, so that then gets us up into things like aiming jigs. Okay, the robot and anything it's about to move must completely fit inside the launch area. Okay, now if they have an aiming jig and they want to bring that aiming jig all the way down to the corner of the table so they know it's in the exact same position every time. Okay, that's not the robot. It is equipment, but it's not the robot. So that part where it says the robot has to be completely inside launch doesn't apply to that aiming jig. Okay? The robot in anything it is about to move must fit completely inside the launch area. If they're not supposed to move that aiming jig, it's probably okay to overhang. Now, if it was me, I would set that aiming jig however I needed to, get the robot exactly where I needed to get it. I'd remove the aiming jig at that point.
Okay.
Because then there's no question.
Right.
And I don't think there's definitely no time disadvantage at the first launch. And I'd say there's barely any disadvantage at the second launch. And again, you could get clever and have your aiming jig calibrated or positioned relative to one of these grid squares in the launch area. And then it's all completely in the launch area. Even if you move it, even if you bump it, it was still completely inside. Okay. Technicians may not touch anything outside their home area or cause anything to move or extend outside this area except the robot. Okay? So again, they don't get to hold back a spring-loaded thing. They don't get to touch anything outside home. After any launch, technicians should allow the robot to return completely into home before interrupting it. See outside home section for more details. Okay, so we launch from launch, the quarter circle. We return to home, which is the quarter circle and the outside rectangle. Launch from launch, return to home. Had a team last year at a not Lawrence County qualifier. I was told when they made it to state, because they did make it, They came up there like, okay, yeah, we're gonna launch from over here, outside of the quarter circle. And I said, yeah, you can't do that. What do you mean we can't do that? Yeah, you launch from launch area. We got to launch from over here at the qualifier. Like, huh? I mean, again, I don't think they were lying. I think possibly somebody's ref training was not quite up to par. And so, but yeah, I tell you, that team, that they were not happy, but like, we very politely and calmly went through the rules. Like, look, this is how it is written, and this is how it was supposed to be done at that other qualifier. Don't know what happened. I'm not getting into if it happened or if it didn't. Again, I'm assuming it did. And that team, this was worse at the state that year because it was the COVID year. And so they only had like 30 minutes between rounds to do rework. But I swear, this team that was able to use practically none of their original programs in their entirety, they strategized in those 30-minute segments between round 1, 2, and 3 to figure out that if they cut this one program down and all it could do was drive the robot out in a straight line to a certain distance and drive back the same distance, they could turn that into a deliver this thing from home to a location on the table. And by round 3, they were in pretty good shape for that. Absolutely proud of that team as much as I have been of anybody practice. Because that's real life. Something went wrong. We gotta adjust. And they did it. Okay? It was not how they wanted it to run. Okay? And hopefully we're resolving that for this year. Okay. Okay, now that's out of page 19 on to page 20. During the match outside home, if technicians interrupt their robot, it must be relaunched. So there was a definition on interrupt that said touching things basically. But again, check the glossary for the definition of interrupt. If that happens, it says right here, number 1 on page 20 now. If they interrupt, it must be relaunched. Just like it was from the beginning. If the robot, and again, they can interrupt in different conditions. If the robot was outside home, even partly, what does that mean? They can interrupt and they're still completely inside home. So if they hit the go button, the robot started out entirely inside home, they realize a quarter second later this thing was out of position. And they need to grab it to keep it from going off somewhere it doesn't need to go. That is still an interruption. But the consequences of that interruption may be different than if it was already partway out onto the board. Okay, so if the robot was outside home, even partly when it was interrupted, they lose a precision token. So that means that little half-second, quarter-second bobble of, we need to reset that. No token loss. Okay? Here is what happens if the robot is interrupted. If the robot was partly outside home, not completely, but partly outside, meaning one little bit of the robot is hung over, doesn't say equipment, says robot. Watch the definitions. If the robot was partly outside home, bring the robot into the home area. If the robot was completely outside home, return the robot to either home area. Now at that point, you did lose a token, but your robot got to swap areas, if you so chose. Below that, and again, this is the set you gotta keep reading over and over and over. So below that, here's what happens if the equipment, to any equipment or mission models that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted outside home, even partly, meaning these rules do not apply for an interruption that was completely inside the launch area, or, well, completely inside home, not the launch area. So, if you launch from the launch area, there's a chance the robot could make a detour through home, and that's why they wrote it that way. Okay? Alright, so, equipment and mission models that were in contact when it was interrupted. So, if that object, whatever it was with the robot when it launched, I call that a delivery. But again, stick with the literal rules there. If it was with the robot on launch, rule says they get to keep it. I'm now perusing the fridge for things that preferably have caffeine and no sugar.
Oh, I've got diet, sun drop in there.
Ooh, I forgot Diet Sundrop even existed because I don't live in Middle Tennessee anymore. Well, I live in part of Middle Tennessee, but I don't think we get
We
Sundrop
live
up there.
toward the east side. There's
Do we get Sundrop? I don't think we
only
do.
3 gas stations.
Okay. I grew up on the non-diet Sundrop. I gotta admit, I don't think it tastes the same as the regular. Not even close. Alright. So if that object was with the robot when it was launched, keep it. Bring it with the robot. Okay? So if you're doing a delivery, regardless of what it was, they get it back. They lose the token, if it was a condition where they lose the token, but they get to keep the stuff. If the object was obtained after the robot was launched, I call this a retrieval. Okay? They went out, they scooped up a thing, they're bringing it back, something goes wrong, they have to interrupt it. Hurts to be them, because they don't get to keep the thing that they were dragging back. Give it back to the referee. It does not go back out on the board, does not get reset. It is a dead piece that is off the board now. The looks on your faces means that this is a very important point for your teams to make sure that when they are doing a retrieval, they have to be very reliable in getting that stuff in their robot back to base. Okay? Because let's game a few of these out. Because I do this pretty much every year with my referees, especially at the regional. Okay? So I'm the robot, and I have a corral or a bucket or whatever that some other mission model is now being held within. I'm pushing that bucket ahead of me. Okay? It's a bulldozer. It's a whatever. Okay? Something goes wrong, and we do an interruption, and the robot, I'm pushing it back, I'm pushing it back. The bucket gets partially or even completely inside the home area, but something goes wrong, and I gotta grab the robot. And the robot has not made it completely back inside home. Let's game that out for a minute. 1, the robot was not completely within home and they did an interruption. That's one condition. 2, there were things they were retrieving that were completely inside home. And so, if the object was obtained after the launch, it's true in this case, give it to the referee. Even if that object and that bucket was completely inside the home area, the robot did not make it all the way back in before you interrupted it, you lose that item. If you are dragging it back with you, same principle applies basically. I take that back. We'll have to check that. So, if the robot was completely inside home and it's dragging something with it, and they grab the robot, again, check your rule books to make sure I do this right. Robot is completely back. They're dragging something behind them. They interrupt. They touch the robot. They do an interruption. So first off, the robot is completely inside home. They don't lose a precision token. Okay. 2, the robot was not partly or completely outside home, so there's no returning. It's completely inside home. Mission models or equipment that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted. If the object was obtained after the robot was launched, then give it to the referees for the remainder of the match.
What about, is this considered a delivery or retrieval? If you're taking the dinosaur from that spot to that spot, would that be a delivery?
Well, the thing is, delivery and retrieval is my words, not rulebook words. It helps me keep things.
Right.
But so let's say they're doing the transfer of the robot from one base to the other for whatever reason. That would be an object that was with the robot when it launched. Now, if they lose it out on the table and by some clever arrangement of programming and luck, they want to go out and grab it and bring it back in. Well, that is an object that was not, that same dinosaur was an object that was not with the robot on that launch. And so the other set of rules apply.
So if I'm launched with the dinosaur trying to get him over here and it stops, the dinosaur's gone.
Okay, so, all right, so let's do that one. I wish I had a little robot here. I'm just gonna use my hands. So I got my dinosaur. The dinosaur started on the right side area. You can move that around if you want. All right, so my hand is the robot. I have the dinosaur here to get started, okay? All right, and so I am, for whatever reason, I am delivering the dinosaur over to the other thing. Something goes wrong, and let's just freeze time right here, right as the interruption happens, okay? My hand is the robot. Okay. Now, is the robot completely outside home?
Definitely.
Yes, okay. So I can return the robot to either area, okay? Here's what happens to any equipment or mission models that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted, and this is one of them. If the object was with the robot when it launched, bring it with the robot. So, that sounds like you have the opportunity, if you, for whatever reason, need to transfer the dinosaur from one base to the other. You might, again, check the rules, game this out rigorously before you just take my word for it. The rules are the authority, not me. Okay, except for that last resort at a tournament if I'm the head ref. If they have the robot, if they have the dinosaur with them, they starts out in the launch area, or starts out in launch area. They move it over. They say, "Oh, hey, yeah, look, we'd like to interrupt this now." Now, again, they're not using the work of a sensor or anything else. At this point, they can interrupt it. Now, I said they can't hand things back and forth, but this sounds like a case where they could. Okay, at the cost of a precision token, which may or may not cost them points. They would have the chance to then use that again. But you're going to keep losing points if you do it too much.
But that wouldn't be a thing where they would.
That would not be a
dinosaur
lose it.
off the board.
That would not be a lose it. No. Now let's say, for whatever reason, now this is probably more what I was thinking of myself, was they're delivering the dinosaur along, and again, delivering is my term, not the rule books. But they started out a mission. And the dinosaur started out with the robot in one launch area. They're moving it over. Something goes weird. The robot loses contact with the dinosaur and goes off and does something else. And then they decide, okay, we got to grab it now. Okay? That's why that paragraph says, here's what happens to things that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted. If they interrupt it out here, and it's away from the dinosaur doesn't get caught under those rules of they get it back or it goes off the table. It goes under the rules of, I think that's going to sit where it is.
So that would be a case if you happen to get lucky and catch it in something else. That would be the only way.
And then in that case, that would then the dinosaur would be a thing that was not with the robot when it launched. And if they do an interruption, those rules apply. Which means basically they could lose it. Okay. Interruption or an interruption exception. If the team does not plan to launch again, they may stop their robot in place without losing a precision token. Robot in anything it is in contact with should remain in place where it was interrupted. And so what that typically means is team asks, or if the team can reach it, the team can reach it. Again, I love these tables in terms of the portability and the lightweight, but man, it scares me to have somebody leaning across this table because I am just not used to them being this light, and I don't want to shift one of these. I definitely don't want a kid to shift one of these rather than it be me. So ideally, there's a very calm reaching over to hit the off button and just leave it where it is. Okay, if a piece of equipment or a mission model is dropped or left outside of home, wait for it to come to rest, like this, like the robot, like the dinosaur if they lost control of it. And again, this is Again, this is why we have the full rule set, because I may have gotten that last part wrong. So, they lost the dinosaur attempting to bring it from point A to point B, and they do an interruption, okay? So that then would be a mission model that was dropped or left outside of home, and it has now come to rest. If it rests completely outside home, it stays as is unless the robot changes it. That is literally in that rule right there, page 20, number 2, during the match outside home. If it rests partly in home, I'm going to drag the tail back here where it's touching the border, or even breaking the boundary of the blue border out there. That is partially in home. It stays as is unless the robot changes it. Alternatively, at any time, the technicians may remove it by hand. If the object removed by hand was a mission model, this is a mission model, so they can say, hey, Mr. Referee, Mr. or Ms. Referee, we want this out of the way. Okay, it's mine now.
Okay, yeah.
Again, this is why we got a 20, 30 some odd page rule book.
So you'd have it out of the way, but you're not.
It's out of the way, but you're not going to get to do it. You don't get a do-over.
Yeah, yeah.
You can then say, oh, we want to do a do-over. Okay, it can stay there, but it's going to have to stay there unless, now, is it legal then to say, oh man, we can't possibly launch it from there? We got no program for that. Oh, but I got a program that will go out here and scoop this guy completely back into the home area, and the robot's completely back in the home area now. Okay, you're back. Do another one. But again, every one of these is coming out of this rule set. Okay? And you're going to be going through it over and over and over with these kids. Okay. If the object was equipment, what is equipment versus a mission model? Equipment is what?
Your attachments, all that stuff.
All the stuff.
Anything you bring to the match.
Anything you bring to the table. If it was equipment, doodly doodly doo, it must be taken into that home area. The one that is partially in is what they mean. Doodly 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 doo, and the team will lose a precision token. So they cannot use that as a way of moving equipment from one side to the other by, exploiting that interruption. Teams cannot separate dual lock, take models apart, break a mission model, may not interrupt their robot in a way that they earn points from it. That's basically, I think that, or there's another language in there, that, like I said, it's basically the language of do not use your eyes and your brain as a replacement for the robot controller or the robot sensors. Points scored in those ways by let's call it a strategic interruption. Well, I don't even want to call it that. A well-timed interruption that could only possible if you had somebody paying attention and hitting it right at that moment. That's going to cost you points. Or at least you're not going to earn points for those missions. Teams may not interfere with the opposing field or robot unless there is a mission exception. So I think that means points failed or lost due to interference will score automatically for the other team. So that puts me in a weird place with figuring out can a team basically grab both hands of this smart grid thing and put them together. So, on the one hand, you are altering the opposing field. There is no mission exception about that, I don't think. And I think that what that's going to end up doing is it's going to give the other team credit for that. Well, because points failed or lost due to interference. So that's more along the lines of you screwed something else up for them.
Yeah.
We'll score automatically.
You're helping them.
If
you're helping them,
they could be.
You are interfering. You have not necessarily failed them any points due to interference. Man, I'm just hoping that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have. But it may well, and
they may argue that they had to do that mission before they could do another one, and because you.
I would have to. I'd have to look if there was an update on that too. my guess is it's probably going to be an update about that by the end of the year. Okay. All right, that gets us up to page 21 after the match scoring. So after 2.5 minutes, the match ends. Technicians must stop their robot and touch nothing else. This is when scoring starts. So for scoring, all mission requirements must be visible at the end of the match, unless a method was required in the mission, which I don't think it was anywhere here. Sometimes we've had missions that says robot must cross this line, but must cross it east to west. Those were annoying. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing, but you had to keep your eye on the robot the whole time and make a little pencil check mark that said, yep, they did that. You know, as long as they didn't screw something else up by the end of the match. When something is required to be completely in an area, and this is real deep into the rules, what I've been talking about the whole time, but it is in here. The lines and airspace above that area count as in unless otherwise mentioned. That is how we get our innovation model that's allowed to be overhanging and still be counted as partially in. That is why we say in versus touching the mat. This is why we say in versus on.
So that said the line, so you could just be, if it was partially, just barely touching the line, still partially.
And the airspace over it.
And, okay.
So you can, if you are overhanging anywhere from the outside border of that thing to the inside, it counts as in, as
Partial.
as at, yeah, well, in. Well, I mean, like, hang on.
Or it could also be.
Well, that says if it's required to be completely in.
That wouldn't be completely in, that would just be considered partially, right?
Right. This is.
So that is definitely so I guess in the strictest term of what they're talking about, a completely in would be, to invert the language, would be as long as it's not sticking outside the border.
Like that. That would be considered partial.
I think that would be considered partially in. It just doesn't say partial on this particular rule. So now I got to go back and look at that a little bit more. I can guarantee you that the innovation model, the way I've got it hung right now, where it is overhanging, but there is not a single bit of that innovation model that is outside the line. It is on the line, it is inside the line, it is on the mat. That still counts as
So
completely
that
in.
would be completely, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, yep.
All right. If a team cannot run their robot, they still gain gracious professionalism points by explaining the situation or being present at the match. I just really hope that doesn't happen, because that's just going to be a rough round for those kids. But that does mean show up. Well, show up or explain the situation, and I assume that means explain the situation to the ref that you would have otherwise been at their table. So if there was a complete robot meltdown and you just can't make that round, well, you're not going to get many points. But I mean, and realistically, I would say show up, stand your 2.5 minutes, cheer on the other team if you want, show up, get your precision token points, get your, well, you're not going to get points for the innovation model unless it makes it to the target. But get your inspection bonus. Shoot, if it went absolutely haywire and you bring a robot that has no possibility of working, and you get your inspection bonus and you get your precision tokens, it's better than not showing up.
Yeah.
Okay. Referee will document the results of the match of the team. When there is agreement on the results, it becomes official, and if needed, the head ref makes the final decision. Only the best score out of 3 counts for awards and achievement. Ties are broken usually with second and third best scores. Okay. So, and again, I will not speak for every referee you will ever see. The way I normally do it is, as long as all the kids, hands behind their back, nobody's going to touch anything. It's like I will walk around the table with them on each one of these missions and say, okay, mission 1, this is what I'm seeing. 1 or 2 or 3 of the kids, yeah, you can see that too. This is how I'm marking it. Mission 2, mission 3, all the way around. This is how I mark. This is how I count. This is how many I see in this condition. This is how many I see in this condition. Okay. And again, the thing with these, especially for the new folks, the old folks, you may remember that. Well, actually, on these score sheets, there is red marks for, for different scoring conditions, and there's a score subtotal off to the side. I don't want to do math on the fly. I definitely don't want a total. I don't even want a subtotal if I can avoid it. I may have to, okay? So I'm going to circle that first 20 on equipment inspection rather than write a 20 down problem. I'd rather that be a yep. You know, I'm going to circle the 10. I may write the 10, okay? For the 5 each, I may do the subtotal and say, 15 right there. I may do the subtotal on the other one that says 10 added and just circle that one, okay? So I may come back, I may do the subtotals to get the scores off to the side, because that's pretty easy math, okay? I'm definitely not adding up all the numbers at the end. I absolutely allow the teams, once they've signed it, to take a picture of that score sheet and go back to the pits and total things up, okay? To know where they're at, okay? On this particular score sheet on the right, the gracious professionalism points, I'm not going to have them look at that before they've signed it. That's our call. It's not much in the way of points. It's almost always an accomplished, unless there was just a total meltdown or something that was just absolutely awe-inspiring. So my team that basically rejiggered the robot in 30 minutes and, sucked it up and dealt with the fact that they got kind of screwed in their qualifier, I gave them a 4. Because they took it, they dealt with it. It didn't make much of a difference to their score, okay? But I thought that was worthwhile. I've never given a developing gracious professionalism, I've never seen, especially at a championship, I've never seen a team have that much of a meltdown. Okay, pages 22 on up is about mission models and where they get used in field setup, and I'm going to kind of skip over most of that because I kind of talked about it. Mostly it's, put down pairs of dual lock in the right position, sticky it to the mat first, then put your Lego mission model on top of it, press it all down, get it good and secured, and then, if the glue's doing its job, you should be able to pop it back off immediately, Now again, you don't jerk it or anything, but try and just sort of lean it off of one, and it'll start popping loose pretty quickly after you get it set down. Okay, so the rest of this is mostly about mission model placement. The other thing in general for new coaches, and if you want to zoom in on some of this, and again I'll use the power plant here as an example that's already been set up. This got pushed a little bit down to the bottom a little farther than it needed to, I think. So when we zoom in on this, assume temporarily that there is actually no gap between the mat and the south end of the table. Go ahead and, can you bring that down over here? Okay, so for new folks that are doing setup, most of these mission models are going to have some sort of broader outline that gives you an idea of where things are going to go. And sometimes they'll have these little skeleton centerline outlines of things. And sometimes you'll see a little something that's a little bit asymmetric that tells you how this thing is supposed to be arranged. So in this case, clearly, if I just looked at the orange and the stick outlines around the left and the right side of this, I might say, well, it can go this way or it can go this way, okay? The things that tell me it doesn't go this way with the red toward the north, but the red part is supposed to go to the, let me put it this way. The red paddle is going to go to the north when it's in the original position, is that down here, there's 2 little right angle pieces here. They're little skeletons that indicate this little support bar for the ramps is going to be down to the south, because there's not one on the other side that sticks out like that. And so then these will stick down like this, and then everything should basically line up. Occasionally, there will be a misprint on the mat or a misinstruction in the field setup guide that gets corrected in the challenge updates. And I think that happened this year with this hydroelectric part. Maybe would have to look in the challenge updates to be certain. New coaches and old coaches both do not get all tore up about a 1/16 of an inch of misalignment somewhere. Your robot should be able to accommodate a little bit of an imprecision somewhere. I can't remember if the actual field setup guide says you can get it to the nearest eighth. We're going to do our best to get them just dead on every time. Doodly-doodly-doo, does that show up anywhere else? Okay. Page 29 of the PDF, again, has an overall map of the board where your kids can use that to sort of, again, that could be part of their sheet of paper that they bring up. Print a map on one side and say, okay, program 1 takes the robot through this area, does this area, and comes back. This is what it does.
Would that count as equipment and would have to go in here too?
So there's a rule that says they get to bring an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Does it say notebook paper or does it just say paper? That's a very good question. Once I find the word paper again, we will.
Not that you couldn't fit in.
May bring 1 sheet of notebook paper per. Okay. Interesting. A sheet of notebook paper that has something photocopied onto it is still a sheet of notebook paper.
Yeah, it could be printed on.
I think mostly that is to indicate a size of a piece of paper.
Right.
Doesn't say handwritten, and that does not count as equipment,
Okay, so it doesn't have.
but it is something they can bring.
Yeah, okay.
So I would say, in the US, I would say it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Everywhere else, I would say it's an A4 size sheet of paper. If I want to be real specific about it, I would say copier paper is not notebook paper. Doesn't say you couldn't run the notebook paper through a copier.
It's back to being an evil genius kind of thing here.
What happens if a mission becomes unstuck during the
So there should be some damage rules in here. And I think what it's going to kind of come down to is there's actually no mention of the word damage in here. There's one mention of the word break.
Yeah.
So outside, okay, so this falls into page 20 somewhat. Oh, yeah, actually this would be page 20. So page 20, during the match outside home, number 3. Teams cannot separate the dual lock, cannot take models apart, cannot break a mission model.
intentionally, I would say.
Intention is not addressed in this rule.
So
Intentional or accidental, they can't do it. What it says is they may also, points scored in these ways
Okay.
will not count. So it definitely says you will not be doing it to gain advantage.
Okay.
Okay? And if something happens by accident
You're not
or
gonna-
intentionally, we're not gonna, I don't see anything that says we're gonna put it back. We're definitely gonna be reassembling stuff on the fly. Okay?
But somebody's not going to take it off and push it off the board and then go work at home to finish the model and get
No.
points for that.
No. And again, for most of what we call, and again, they're kind of being as specific as they need to cover a lot of stuff for this particular case. Okay? So the only things that are dual locked are the things that are going to be stuck on the table.
Right. The actual mission.
Therefore, separating dual lock is a thing you could do to wreck one of the things that sits out on the table. It's not the only thing you could do. You could tear the red hooks off of the hydro dam and not separate the dual lock possibly, but it does say may not break a mission model, may not take models apart. Okay? But rather than disqualifying them, rather than anything else, it's, well, you broke it, in one of these ways, it's gonna stay how it is. Now, well, yeah, even if they break it, and we're definitely not gonna take it out of their way. If they said, yeah, this is now in our way, could you please, no, like, no, you put it there.
So if they say we're doing this and backed up, hit this and knocked it off by accident, it would just stay off.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to stay there.
Okay.
Would it lose points despite the fact that it's not technically in its right spot? But if they were to have done that mission prior to it, drop the three batteries in
and this is
So
gone.
this would fall on, all right, so y'all help me out on this one. Let's go ahead and break this apart, okay?
So let's say they hit it and knock it like
All right,
that.
so they've broken it off, okay? Now,
But this has already been done.
Yeah, let's assume that.
Let's
points,
assume that.
okay, points scored by
Okay.
by taking dual lock apart will not count.
Okay.
So if for whatever reason they said, well, we're gonna have to break this thing loose because this other position on the table is where we're gonna deposit the stuff in.
Okay.
No. If they broke it loose, and this, yeah, now the dual lock's making me a liar. I think that's gonna go right about there.
Basically, you can't knock it off of there, push it.
But if they knocked it off,
Points.
if they knocked it off if they knocked it off and that oddball position was not part of their strategy, and they knock it off early.
Right.
Oh my God, there's no possible way we're going to be able to handle, getting these things. Oh, we tried anyway, and, instead of, dropping the bits in where they thought they were, they end up dropping them in, and they still go in because they just so happened
Rolls into the right spot.
to pick a position where it would work either way. But they didn't intend to drop it in that position. I'd give them the points. But if they're doing it,
You're not giving them points if they take this like this and
if
bring
they
it over
take
here
it
and
for-
want the 3 points for the being in the circle with those and the points for being inside the.
I would say they definitely. So if they broke the dual lock in order to gain points for bringing something over here, the answer is no. They do not get points
Okay.
that are a consequence of them breaking the dual lock.
Right. Which would then it would be exploiting the point system.
Yeah.
But if they accidentally hit it
That's
and
okay.
kind of knock it off, that's different.
I think it is.
You're not doing it for strategic
Right.
advantage.
Okay, so they would still get these points because this is,
And those points too, if
Yeah.
it was it's just now not in its right spot. But
If their program was designed to do it where in the original position,
Right.
and it just so happens in the wrong position, they still managed to dump it in there and get points. I mean, that's a really hard judgment call to make. I mean, if I saw them do it 3 rounds running, we have a problem.
intention there.
If they did it in 1 round, but not the other 2, and the other 2 rounds, it's clear they ran the same program and it's dropping it in that original location. And then on the 3rd round, they broke it and again, kind of a judgment call, but for all practical purposes, they're gonna have to work to get something broken off the table.
Yeah, you're gonna have to hit it.
pretty hard.
Well, I think what ended up happening is we actually had a situation where it was pushing, and I think they've added more of those locking, the dual locks, but one of them, they over-programmed it, so instead of it going up to it and stopping it, kept going, and then a couple of them pulled off, so.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, again, it's gonna be whatever's in the rule book.
Right, and that's,
So, it's not that they can't break it, but
They can't
if they
break it.
break it in such a, points scored due to breaking a model are not gonna count.
right, so like again, bringing it over here is not gonna add the 3.
Or again,
inside
I
the
would say,
circle.
even if they didn't bring it over, if they had, for whatever weird reason, they have a strategy of break it off and move it a 1/4 inch in a different direction.
Yeah.
So they can then drop it in that weird location, it's not gonna count.
Right.
Now, that's gonna be really hard for me to pick up on.
Well, I think the easiest way is, was it finished prior to it breaking, or was it finished after? Because if it's finished after, then it looks like, you know, it was pre-planned.
It could, but again,
Could be
that's
accidental.
one of those things where it says, well, but we sent the robot to drop it dead center in its original location. Lucky us that we didn't move it so far away that we could still drop it dead center of the original location and we get the same points.
Yeah,
I'd have a hard time taking points away from them on that.
okay. I know for us, like when we're staging vehicles, we have room to move if we notice it's going to.
Absolutely.
Be slightly off, so they could
Well, and
theoretically
even then,
plan
yes,
for it
yes.
by just slightly adding or subtracting.
But it's not because, just don't do it, please. You know, but yeah, that would be a case where they could have broken it to a different position, and they could adjust something in their programming or their setup to where they don't get penalized for it. It's hard for me to say that's a case where they moved it, you know, in order to make that, again, they moved it to make it easier. We have a problem. You can normally tell when they break something loose, they never intended to. There's always like, oh my God, what's this doing? And, you know, they can't get to it in time. You know, so I don't think that's gonna be an issue. But point being, hopefully we still got battery on that phone, because I've been rambling for two and a half hours at this point. Primary thing being, read the rule book. Read the rule book repeatedly. Have your kids read the rule book. Like I said, you're gonna have somebody, or that somebody's gonna be the brother or sister or one of your teammates, or one of your team kids, you know, that is just going to delight in finding perfectly legal loopholes that nobody ever thought of. You know who they are. Give that kid a channel for that otherwise truly irritating personality quirk that they have. That is their time to shine. Okay. All right. Well, clearly, since y'all are the only ones in the room, it's up to y'all's questions rather than anybody else.
I think you addressed them as we went. I mean, I can't think of anything else. Like, well, this one's,
Okay, let's get the camera to wherever you're going to go, just
This
for the
one-
benefit of everybody else.
is kind of, there's your bird. Now, seeing that we can deliver 3 of these to here and 3 to here and all that, those are point scores if we get them here. I mean, that's gonna go, if that ends up in there, is that good? If it's just by
Absolutely.
luck?
Yeah, by luck, wherever, if it's by luck or by, you know, design or whatever, the rule is we score things as they stand at the end of the match.
And then.
Which also means if by luck it wound up somewhere, and then by bad luck you move it somewhere else later,
Right.
you don't get points.
And these, I mean, ideally, we'd hope they roll here and we can pick them up, right? And we're
You
good.
either pick them up out of the home area, or you have something that you have a big bucket that they fall into, and you pick up
You
the bucket.
retrieve, okay, all right.
So that kind of, now there's 2 sides to a board.
There
which
are.
makes things a little more interesting. In the past, I mean, I know we're not supposed to fling things across boards, but if it was to, because these roll naturally.
Yeah.
If the robot was intended to roll one across to the other side, would that be?
Okay, so independent of this,
Right.
this power
So,
plant model,
like
could
the-
a robot roll a thing, regardless of what it is, from one base to the other, all right?
Like if you started here and
Yeah.
have the robot hit it and
Or-
it rolls
yeah.
over here.
Or just like the dinosaur, if it was to roll off of something and just
And
use its
roll in.
momentum
Yeah.
to the other side. Theoretically, it left one home and went to the other.
Okay, so
You didn't
let's, let's figure out what a launch is, because if you don't launch,
Right.
it's not a mission.
Okay,
I'm pretty certain that's a rule,
okay.
okay?
But we can't say, all right, here you go, you can't do
Right.
that.
You definitely can't do it by hand.
Definitely not gonna get that passed.
Yeah.
Okay, doodly. During the match inside home, there's let me go back and find definitions of launch and such. Okay. So a launch is when the technicians activate the robot from completely within a launch area to move autonomously. Okay,
Right,
so robot autonomously
right.
shoves a rolling thing.
Or
And the
let's,
robot was completely within the launch area and it did it autonomously. Okay, I'd say that is a launch, even if the robot doesn't
leave
leave
home.
the leave
Well,
the launch area, which
right.
is part of home.
Okay. You're
The
right.
robot has to start out completely in the launch area.
So we're in launch area, he rolls 2 inches forward, stops, rolls across, it falls off of him, whatever, pushes it, whatever, gives it the momentum.
Okay, yeah, all right. So in that case, regardless of where the robot winds up, when they hit the go button
Okay,
and the robot moves on its own,
okay,
that is a launch. All right,
Okay.
let's get that straight.
All
Okay,
right.
so yeah, it has a launch, and that launch has caused a thing to start rolling
okay,
outside of the launch area.
okay.
All right. Before the match. That's not before the match. During the match, inside home. That's not part of that part. Let me make sure there's nothing else in there. Technicians may not keep anything from moving. That's not the case. Robot and anything that's about to move must fit in completely inside the launch area.
Okay,
No problem. So we've done that. Technicians may not touch anything outside the home area or cause anything to move or extend outside the area,
okay.
except the robot.
That's the on button.
Okay.
As long as this is rolling.
After any launch,
Makes it in here,
technicians
we
should
should be
allow the
good,
robot
right?
to return completely into home before interrupting it. See outside home for more Okay. There has not been an interruption. The robot was completely inside home. If a piece of equipment or a mission model is dropped or left outside of home, wait for it to come to rest.
Does it
But
play where it stands?
if it gets into home, we can grab it as soon as it gets in there?
If it rests if a piece of equipment is dropped or left outside home, wait for it to come to rest. If it rests completely outside home, it stays as it stays as is unless the robot changes it. If it's partly in home, all right. But if it's completely in home,
If it makes
it
it
stays
from-
as is.
Okay.
Okay. But if that item, if it's completely outside home, it
Right.
stays as is. If it's partly in home,
Okay.
there's another set of rules.
Okay.
If it is completely in home,
Okay,
then that should be available for the kids to manipulate.
okay.
And again, check
That's
the
We've gone over a
rules.
bunch of times, so.
But I think that means that a robot could launch a thing across the table
Okay,
to deliver things from one side to the other without literally trucking the thing under its own power to the other side.
okay. That'd save a lot of time.
It might.
You will have to level up those tables.
Yeah.
You may not be able to rely on tables being perfectly level.
Can we bring our own shims to level tables?
Probably not.
Can we argue it after the point that it wasn't level?
I'm going to say that depends on how out of level it was.
We'll get a plumb bob out there. Just, nope.
Go into Lowe's and gonna buy me a big long level.
Which now reminds me, I'm just going to bring my 4-footer to every tournament I'm involved in.
We'll see you soon. We'll bring our own just to have double check. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all the questions. I mean, I think we've gone through everything as we've had situations.
I feel informed.
All right, well, let's stop the video,
All right.
because that's gonna be a monster.